Weak people revenge, strong people forgive, intelligent people ignore. The difference between stupidity and genius is that genius has its limits. The only thing more dangerous than ignorance is arrogance. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. There is no vaccine against stupidity. Don't listen to the person who has the answers. Listen to the person who has the questions. Information is not knowledge. The only source of knowledge is experience. You need experience to gain wisdom. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. Everything that exists in your life does so because of two things: something you did or something you didn't do. The more I study science, the more I believe in God. Success comes from curiosity, concentration, perseverance, and self-criticism. Blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth. The height of stupidity is most clearly demonstrated by the individual who ridicules something he knows nothing about. If you want different results, do not do the same things. Just because you believe in something does not mean that it is true. Failure is success in progress. If you want to live a happy life, tie it to a goal, not to people or objects. Do you believe in miracles? Well, you should. In fact, life itself is a big miracle. There are so many things that are beyond our understanding. There are two ways to live. You can live as if nothing is a miracle. You can live as if everything is a miracle. Be a voice, not an echo. Learn from yesterday, live for today, hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. We cannot get to where we dream of being tomorrow unless we change our thinking today. Women always worry about things that men forget. Men always worry about things women remember. Mankind invented the atomic bomb, but no mouse would ever construct a mousetrap. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Imagination is the language of the soul. Pay attention to your imagination and you will discover all you need to be fulfilled. The measure of intelligence is the ability to change. Thinking is hard work. That's why so few do it. You can't use an old map to explore a new world. A clever person solves a problem. A wise person avoids it. Don't wait for miracles. Your whole life is a miracle. Live life to the fullest. You have to color outside the lines once in a while if you want to make your life a masterpiece. Laugh some every day. Keep growing, keep dreaming, keep following your heart. The important thing is not to stop questioning. In the middle of every difficulty lies opportunity. Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Experience is knowledge, all the rest is information. Intelligence is not the ability to store information, but to know where to find it. Logic can take you from point A to point B. Imagination can take you wherever you want. A person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. Don't let your brain interfere with your heart. Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving. 3 great forces rule the world: stupidity, fear, and greed. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. If one day you have to choose between the world and love, remember this: if you choose the world, you'll be left without love. But if you choose love, with it you will conquer the world. Everyone knew it was impossible until a fool who didn't know came along and did it. Once you stop learning, you start dying. Only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and I'm not sure about the former. Be a loner. That gives you time to wonder, to search for the truth. Have holy curiosity. Make your life worth living. God did not create evil. Just as darkness is the absence of light, evil is the absence of God. Condemnation before investigation is the highest form of ignorance. Success equals 1 part work plus 1 part play plus 1 part keep your mouth shut. There comes a point in your life when you need to stop reading other people's books and write your own. I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to find it when I need it. Knowledge is realizing that the street is one way. Wisdom is looking in both directions anyway. Genius is making complex ideas simple, not making simple ideas complex. Men marry women with the hope they will never change. Women marry men with the hope they will change. Invariably, they are both disappointed. Any fool can know. The point is to understand. Creativity is seeing what others see and thinking what no one else has ever thought. Strive not to be a success, but rather to be of value. Never do anything against conscience, even if the state demands it. I'm more interested in the future than in the past, because the future is where I intend to live. I'm more interested in the future than in the past, because the future is where I intend to live. Artificial intelligence is no match for natural stupidity. I have only 2 rules which I regard as principles of conduct. The first is, have no rules. The second is, be independent of the opinion of others. A ship is always safe at the shore, but that is not what it is built for. I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I will be. 3 rules of work. Out of clutter find simplicity. From discord find harmony. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. When you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, it seems like 2 minutes. When you sit on a hot stove for 2 minutes, it seems like 2 hours. That's relativity. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. Knowledge and ego are directly related. The less knowledge, the greater the ego. I am neither especially clever nor especially gifted. I am only very, very curious. When the solution is simple, God is answering. If you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales. The mind that opens to a new idea never returns to its original size. The woman who follows the crowd will usually go no further than the crowd. The woman who walks alone is likely to find herself in places no one has ever been before. The true definition of madness is repeating the same action over and over, hoping for a different result. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. Never underestimate your own ignorance. I believe we are here to do good. It is the responsibility of every human being to aspire to do something worthwhile, to make the world a better place than the one we found. The true sign of intelligence is not knowledge but imagination. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. You do not really understand something unless you can explain it to your grandmother. Don't listen to their words. Fix your attention on their deeds. You never fail until you stop trying. Student is not a container you have to fill, but a torch you have to light up. Live with purpose. Don't let people or things around you get you down. Most people see what is and never see what can be. Logic will get you from a to-be. Imagination will take you everywhere. There is a driving force more powerful than steam, electricity, and nuclear power: the will. Persistence is the most powerful force on earth. It can move mountains. At least once a day, allow yourself the freedom to think and dream for yourself. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. The only mistake in life is the lesson not learned. If I had only 1 hour to save the world, I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem and only 5 minutes finding the solution. When you trip over love, it is easy to get up, but when you fall in love, it is impossible to stand again. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. The world is in greater peril from those who tolerate or encourage evil than from those who actually commit it. The press, which is mostly controlled by vested interests, has an excessive influence on public opinion. A bartender is just a pharmacist with a limited inventory. Adversity introduces a man to himself. If the bee disappeared off the surface of the globe, then man would have only 4 years of life left. No more bees, no more pollination, no more plants, no more animals, no more man. A great thought begins by seeing something differently, with a shift of the mind's eye. No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. Nothing happens unless something moves. I refuse to engage in an intellectual battle with an unarmed man. Matter is energy. Energy is light. We are all light beings. I have made the Bhagavad Gita as the main source of my inspiration and guide for the purpose of scientific investigations and formation of my theories. Many of the things you can count don't count. Many of the things you can't count really count. How many people are trapped in their everyday habits, part numb, part frightened, part indifferent? To have a better life, we must keep choosing how we are living. Those who manage their way into a crisis are not necessarily the right people to manage their way out of a crisis. Be kind to people who are different from you. Time is not at all what it seems. It does not flow in only one direction, and the future exists simultaneously with the past. Outer changes always begin with an inner change of attitude. Know where to find the information and how to use it. That's the secret of success. Do not grow old, no matter how long you live. Never cease to stand like curious children before the great mystery into which we were born. The best design is the simplest one that works. The world is a dangerous place to live, not because of the people who are evil, but because of the people who don't do anything about it. Never memorize what you can look up in a book. The individual who has experienced solitude will not easily become a victim of mass suggestion. Compassionate people are geniuses in the art of living, more necessary to the dignity, security, and joy of humanity than the discoverers of knowledge. It is the supreme art of the teacher to awaken joy in creative expression and knowledge. More the knowledge, lesser the ego, lesser the knowledge, more the ego. Creativity is intelligence having fun. Stupidity is a personal achievement which transcends national boundaries. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. Remember today, for it is the beginning of always. Today marks the start of a brave new future filled with all your dreams can hold. Think truly to the future and make those dreams come true. The minority, the ruling class at present, has the schools and press, usually the church as well, under its thumb. This enables it to organize and sway the emotions of the masses and make its tool of them. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. Earth is the insane asylum of the universe. Those who have the privilege to know have the duty to act. We can understand almost anything, but we can't understand how we understand. Imagination is more important than knowledge. If at first the idea is not absurd, then there is no hope for it. Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. The ideas that have lighted my way have been kindness, beauty, and truth. When I have 1 week to solve a seemingly impossible problem, I spend 6 days defining the problem. Then the solution becomes obvious. It may be possible to fight intolerance, stupidity, and fanaticism separately, but when they come together, there is no hope. When I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect about how God created this universe, everything else seems so superfluous. All conditions and all circumstances in our lives are a result of a certain level of thinking. If we want to change the conditions and circumstances, we have to change the level of thinking that is responsible for it. Everything you can imagine, nature has already created. If you want to know the future, look at the past. I came to America because of the great freedom which I heard existed in this country. I made a mistake in selecting America as a land of freedom, a mistake I cannot repair in the balance of my lifetime. It is entirely possible that behind the perception of our senses, worlds are hidden of which we are unaware. If I were not a physicist, I would probably be a musician. I often think in music. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. Everyone should be respected as an individual, but no one idolized. Nothing causes more consternation in a group of hypocrites than one honest man. Concerning matter, we have been all wrong. What we have called matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. You have to learn the rules of the game, and then you have to play better than anyone else. The most important thing is to not stop questioning. One should not pursue goals that are easily achieved. One must develop an instinct for what one can just barely achieve through one's greatest efforts. Our task must be to free ourselves by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. The value of a college education is not the learning of many facts, but the training of the mind to think. Matter is spirit reduced to point of visibility. Paper is to write things down that we need to remember. Our brains are used to think. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. The dog is very smart. He feels sorry for me because I receive so much mail. That's why he tries to bite the mailman. The only source of knowledge is experience. There's a genius in all of us. The world is not threatened by evil people, but by those who allow evil to take place. The intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. There comes a leap in consciousness, call it intuition or what you will. The solution comes to you, and you don't know how or why. I never allow myself to become discouraged under any circumstances. The three great essentials to achieve anything worthwhile are: first, hard work; second, stick-to-itiveness; third, common sense. Have the courage to take your own thoughts seriously, for they will shape you. We are part of the whole, which we call the universe, but it is an optical delusion of our mind that we think we are separate. This separateness is like a prison for us. Our job is to widen the circle of our compassion so we feel connected with all people and situations. Past is dead, future is uncertain. Present is all you have, so eat, drink, and live merry. The state is made for man, not man for the state. That is to say, the state should be our servant and not we its slaves. The important things are always simple. Life isn't worth living unless it is lived for someone else. There is only one road to human greatness, through the school of hard knocks. I believe in intuitions and inspirations. I sometimes feel that I am right. I do not know that I am. Imagination is the highest form of research. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. If we knew what it was we were doing, it would not be called research, would it? It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. Truth is what stands the test of experience. The thinking that got us to where we are is not the thinking that will get us to where we want to be. Everyone has two choices. We're either full of love or full of fear. I think 99 times and find nothing. I stop thinking, swim in the silence, and the truth comes to me. There's no question dolphins are smarter than humans as they play more. It is better to believe than to disbelieve. In doing, you bring everything to the realm of possibility. Solitude is painful when one is young, but delightful when one is more mature. Look deep into nature, and then you will understand everything better. If you can't explain something simply, you don't know enough about it. Life is a preparation for the future, and the best preparation for the future is to live as if there were none. Once we accept our limits, we go beyond them. I never think of the future, it comes soon enough. The only thing we can be certain of in this life is that we can be certain of nothing. Out of clutter, find simplicity. I admit that thoughts influence the body. Never regard study as a duty, but as the enviable opportunity to learn. God reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists. Try first to be a man of value, success will follow. A thought that sometimes makes me hazy, am I or are the others crazy? Highly developed spirits often encounter resistance from mediocre minds. Genius abhors consensus because when consensus is reached, thinking stops. Stop nodding your head. The devil has put a penalty on all things we enjoy in life. Either we suffer in our health, or we suffer in our soul, or we get fat. The most precious things in life are not those you get for money. Albert is a very poor student. He is mentally slow, unsociable, and is always daydreaming. He is spoiling it for the rest of the class. It would be in the best interests of all if he were removed from school immediately. Here's a challenge. Study a complicated topic in such detail that anyone interested can nod their head and understand as you explain specific concepts within the topic. One should never impose one's views on a problem. One should rather study it, and in time a solution will reveal itself. Future medicine will be the medicine of frequencies. You can't solve your problems by using the same thinking that got you into those problems in the first place. If you have never failed, you have never tried anything new. To be free means to be independent, not to be influenced by what others think and say. Whoever is careless with the truth in small matters cannot be trusted in important affairs. You might as well not be alive if you're not in awe of God. I was originally supposed to become an engineer, but the thought of having to expend my creative energy on things that make practical everyday life even more refined, with a loathsome capital gain as the goal, was unbearable to me. When you examine the lives of the most influential people who have ever walked among us, you discover one thread that winds through them all. They have been aligned first with their spiritual nature, and only then with their physical selves. I live in that solitude which is painful in youth, but delicious in the years of maturity. I am content in my later years. I have kept my good humor and take neither myself nor the next person seriously. I speak to everyone in the same way, whether he is the garbage man or the president of the university. The truth of a theory can never be proven, for one never knows if future experience will contradict its conclusions. The greater the doubt, the greater the awakening. I do not believe in the God of theology who rewards good and punishes evil. My God created laws that take care of that. His universe is not ruled by wishful thinking, but by immutable laws. Every day I remind myself that my inner and outer life are based on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received, and am still receiving. The tragedy of life is what dies in the hearts and souls of people while they live. To obtain an assured favorable response from people, it is better to offer them something for their stomachs instead of their brains. Peace comes through understanding. It has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. The important thing is to not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Where there is love, there is no imposition. We act as though comfort and luxury were the chief requirements of life. All that we need to make us happy is something to be enthusiastic about. The main task of the Spirit is to free man from his ego. Scientists investigate that which already is. Engineers create that which has never been. The human spirit must prevail over technology. The most important human endeavor is the striving for morality in our actions. Our inner balance and even our very existence depend on it. Only morality in our actions can give beauty and dignity to life. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. It is only to the individual that a soul is given. If you want your children to be smart, tell them stories. If you want them to be really smart, tell them more stories. If you want your children to be brilliant, tell them even more stories. Not until the creation and maintenance of decent conditions of life for all men are recognized and accepted as a common obligation of all men and all countries, not until then shall we, with a certain degree of justification, be able to speak of mankind as civilized. The true measure of a man is the degree to which he has managed to subjugate his ego. Our separation from each other is an optical illusion. If the facts don't fit the theory, change the facts. We dance for laughter, we dance for tears, we dance for madness, we dance for fears, we dance for hopes, we dance for screams. We are the dancers, we create the dreams. Love is a better teacher than duty. To act intelligently in human affairs is only possible if an attempt is made to understand the thoughts, motives, and apprehension of one's opponent so fully that one can see the world through their eyes. Imagination is vastly more important than intelligence. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift. Education is not received and is achieved. A society's competitive advantage will come not from how well its schools teach the multiplication and periodic tables, but from how well they stimulate imagination and creativity. Life is a great tapestry. The individual is only an insignificant thread in an immense and miraculous pattern. Experts are just trained dogs. My mind is my laboratory. We can't solve today's problems with the mentality that created them. Great spirits have always encountered violent opposition from mediocre minds. The economic anarchy of capitalist society as it exists today is, in my opinion, the real source of evil. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions. Real sign of intelligence isn't knowledge, it's imagination. The thing is not to stop questioning. I believe that we don't need to worry about what happens after this life, as long as we do our duty here to love and to serve. One should respect an honest person even if he expresses opinions differing from one's own. Men should continue to fight, but they should fight for things worthwhile, not for imaginary geographical lines, racial prejudices, and private greed draped in the colors of patriotism. The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. That is the way to learn the most, that when you are doing something with such enjoyment that you don't notice that the time passes. All that's different about me is that I still ask the questions most people stopped asking at age 5. I don't teach my students, I provide the circumstances in which they can learn. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be changed from one form to another. If someone feels that he has never made a mistake in his life, it only means that he has never tried anything new in his life. Bureaucracy is the death of all sound work. In matters of truth and justice, there is no difference between large and small problems, for issues concerning the treatment of people are all the same. The universe is stranger than we imagine. An expert is a person who has few new ideas. A beginner is a person with many. Any society which does not insist upon respect for all life must necessarily decay. Racism is America's greatest disease. Racism is a disease of the white man. If people would only talk about what they understood, Earth would be a very quiet place. In order to be an immaculate member of a flock of sheep, one must above all be a sheep oneself. Creativity is contagious. Pass it on. There is, however, one other human right which is infrequently mentioned but which seems to be destined to become very important. This is the right or the duty of the individual to abstain from cooperating in activities which he considers wrong or pernicious. The important thing is to never stop questioning, never lose a holy curiosity. A true genius admits that she knows nothing. Anyone who doesn't take truth seriously in small matters cannot be trusted in large ones either. An oligarchy of private capital cannot be effectively checked even by a democratically organized political society, because under existing conditions, private capitalists inevitably control, directly or indirectly, the main sources of information. Even if you have to go through hell, go without hesitation. Education is only a ladder to gather fruit from the tree of knowledge, not the fruit itself. Our lives will be measured by what we do for others. If you can't explain what you are doing to a 9-year-old, then either you still don't understand it very well, or it's not all that worthwhile in the first place. Everyone who is seriously involved in the pursuit of science becomes convinced that a spirit is manifest in the laws of the universe, a spirit vastly superior to that of man, and one in the face of which we with our modest powers must feel humble. Most people say that it is the intellect which makes a great scientist. They are wrong. It is character. Private capitalists inevitably control, directly or indirectly, the main sources of information. It is thus extremely difficult, and indeed in most cases quite impossible, for the individual citizen to come to objective conclusions and to make intelligent use of his political rights. The stupid are invincible. Nothing will benefit human health and increase the chances for survival of life on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet. It is abhorrent to me when a fine intelligence is paired with an unsavory character. A man must learn to understand the motives of human beings, their illusions, and their sufferings. The value of achievement lies in the achieving. The only justifiable purpose of political institutions is to ensure the unhindered development of the individual. All of us who are concerned for peace and triumph of reason and justice must be keenly aware how small an influence reason and honest good will exert upon events in the political field. There are two ways to live. You can live as if nothing is a miracle. You can live as if everything is a miracle. Human beings can attain a worthy and harmonious life only if they are able to rid themselves, within the limits of human nature, of the striving for the wish fulfillment of material kinds. The goal is to raise the spiritual values of society. Games are the most elevated form of investigation. They're two things that are infinite: human stupidity and the universe. I don't know about the universe. Nothing happens until something moves. The effort to strive for truth has to precede all other efforts. Even a fool is wise after an event. Body and soul are not two different things, but only two different ways of perceiving the same thing. Similarly, physics and psychology are only different attempts. If you feed your mind as often as you feed your stomach, then you'll never have to worry about feeding your stomach or a roof over your head or clothes on your back. That deep emotional conviction of the presence of a superior reasoning power, which is revealed in the incomprehensible universe, forms my idea of God. Art is standing with one hand extended into the universe and one hand extended into the world, and letting ourselves be a conduit for passing energy. I never made one of my discoveries through the process of rational thinking. Politics is a pendulum whose swings between anarchy and tyranny are fueled by perennially rejuvenated illusions. It is harder to crack prejudice than an atom. Example isn't another way to teach, it is the only way to teach. The only race I know is the human one. Be a loner, that gives you time to wonder. Although I am a typical loner in my daily life, my awareness of belonging to the invisible community of those who strive for truth, beauty, and justice has prevented me from feelings of isolation. If people are good because they fear punishment and hope for reward, then we are a sorry lot indeed. I have yet to meet a single person from our culture, no matter what his or her educational background, IQ, and specific training, who had powerful transpersonal experiences and continues to subscribe to the materialistic monism of Western science. We will never be able to solve the problems of tomorrow with the thinking of today. I love humanity, but I hate humans. Live your life as though everything is a miracle. Enjoying the joys of others and suffering with them, these are the best guides for man. I want to know how God created this world. I am not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know God's thoughts. The rest are details. Learn from yesterday, live for today. It is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education. All meaningful and lasting change starts first in your imagination and then works its way out. Imagination is more important than knowledge. My feeling is religious insofar as I am imbued with the consciousness of the insufficiency of the human mind to understand more deeply the harmony of the universe, which we try to formulate as laws of nature. Reading, after a certain age, diverts the mind too much from its creative pursuits. Any man who reads too much and uses his own brain too little falls into lazy habits of thinking. Only morality in our actions can give beauty and dignity to life. I live my daydreams in music. I see my life in terms of music. I get most joy in life out of music. Imagination is everything. It is the preview of life's coming attractions. Given the millions of billions of Earth-like planets, life elsewhere in the universe, without a doubt, does exist. In the vastness of the universe, we are not alone. Everything that is really great and inspiring is created by the individual who can labor in freedom. I am a deeply religious non-believer. This is a somewhat new kind of religion. Force always attracts men of low morality. A perfection of means and confusion of aims seems to be our main problem. Arrows of hate have been aimed at me too, but they have never hit me because somehow they belong to another world with which I have no connection whatsoever. Memory is deceptive because it is colored by today's events. The more cruel the wrong that men commit against an individual or a people, the deeper their hatred and contempt for their victim. I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Our death is not an end if we can live on in our children and the younger generation, for they are us. Our bodies are only wilted leaves on the tree of life. While I am a convinced pacifist, there are circumstances in which I believe the use of force is appropriate, namely, in the face of an enemy unconditionally bent on destroying me and my people. The high destiny of the individual is to serve rather than to rule. Nothing in the world makes people so afraid as the influence of independent-minded people. What a sad era when it is easier to smash an atom than a prejudice. You can't blame gravity for falling in love. Everything is energy, and that's all there is to it. The true value of a human being can be found in the degree to which he has attained liberation from the self. There's been a quantum leap technologically in our age, but unless there's another quantum leap in human relations, unless we learn to live in a new way towards one another, there will be a catastrophe. Any man who can drive safely while kissing a pretty girl is simply not giving the kiss the attention it deserves. A scientist is a mimosa when he himself has made a mistake, and a roaring lion when he discovers a mistake of others. No amount of experimentation can ever prove me right. A single experiment can prove me wrong. Don't become a seeker of success. Become a person of value. It is difficult to say what truth is, but sometimes it is so easy to recognize a falsehood. Vegetarian food leaves a deep impression on our nature. If the whole world adopts vegetarianism, it can change the destiny of humankind. It would seem that men always need some idiotic fiction in the name of which they can hate one another. Once it was religion, now it is the state. Please explain the problem to me slowly, as I do not understand things quickly. I never teach my pupils. I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. Never lose a holy curiosity. Try not to become a man of success, but rather try to become a man of value. He is considered successful in our day who gets more out of life than he puts in, but a man of value will give more than he receives. Time and space are not conditions of existence. Time and space is a model for thinking. We have to do the best we are capable of. This is our sacred human responsibility. Nothing truly valuable can be achieved except by the unselfish cooperation of many individuals. An empty stomach is not a good political advisor. Playfulness is the essential feature of productive thought. Since our inner experiences consist of reproductions and combinations of sensory impressions, the concept of a soul without a body seemed to me to be empty and devoid of meaning. When you look at yourself from a universal standpoint, something inside always reminds or informs you that there are bigger and better things to worry about. A life directed chiefly toward the fulfillment of personal desires will sooner or later always lead to bitter disappointment. Do not worry about your difficulties in mathematics. I can assure you mine are still greater. The world as we have created it is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. The real problem is in the hearts and minds of men. It is not a problem of physics, but of ethics. It is easier to denature plutonium than to denature the evil spirit of man. In a healthy nation, there is a kind of dramatic balance between the will of the people and the government, which prevents its degeneration into tyranny. The individual must not merely wait and criticize. He must defend the cause the best he can. The fate of the world will be such as the world deserves. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge. God is clever, but not dishonest. The further the spiritual evolution of mankind advances, the more certain it seems to me that the path to genuine religiosity does not lie through the fear of life and the fear of death and blind faith, but through striving after rational knowledge. The more I learn of physics, the more I am drawn to metaphysics. Small is the number of them that see with their own eyes and feel with their own hearts. The religion of the future will be a cosmic religion, the religion which based on experience, which refuses dogmatic. If there's any religion that would cope the scientific needs, it will be Buddhism. Creative energy is more critical than learning. I wish to do something great and wonderful, but I must start by doing the little things like they were great and wonderful. 100 times every day I remind myself that my inner and outer life are based on the labors of others. We experience ourselves, our thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. I am also convinced that one gains the purest joy from spirited things only when they are not tied in with earning one's livelihood. We owe a lot to the Indians who taught us how to count, without which no worthwhile scientific discovery could have been made. Teaching should be such that what is offered is perceived as a valuable gift and not as a hard duty. It is every man's obligation to put back into the world at least the equivalent of what he takes out of it. The value of a man resides in what he gives. Life is sacred, that is to say, it is the supreme value, to which all other values are subordinate. Time and space are modes by which we think and not conditions in which we live. The one who walks alone is likely to find himself in places no one has ever been. The heart says yes, but the mind says no. The only sure way to avoid making mistakes is to have no new ideas. A man should look for what is, and not for what he thinks should be. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. I learned many years ago never to waste time trying to convince my colleagues. I want to be cremated so people won't come to worship at my bones. The sane thinking that has led you to where you are is not going to lead you to where you want to go. The most beautiful gift of nature is that it gives one pleasure to look around and try to comprehend what we see. I believe that a simple and unassuming manner of life is best for everyone, best both for the body and the mind. Necessity is the mother of all invention. Not all that counts can be counted. The most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or hostile universe. Philosophy is empty if it isn't based on science. Science discovers, philosophy interprets. It's not that life has been easy, perfect, or exactly as expected. I just choose to be happy and grateful no matter how it all turns out. If people are good only because they fear punishment and hope for reward, then we are a sorry lot indeed. Intellectual growth should commence at birth and cease only at death. The definition of genius is taking the complex and making it simple. With fame, I become more and more stupid, which of course is a very common phenomenon. In a sailboat, I become oblivious to everything else in the world. The only thing that interferes with my learning is my education. Nature conceals her secrets because she is sublime, not because she is a trickster. Most teachers waste their time by asking questions which are intended to discover what a pupil does not know, whereas the true art of questioning has for its purpose to discover what pupils knows or is capable of knowing. A happy man is too satisfied with the present to dwell too much on the future. The future is an unknown, but a somewhat predictable unknown. To look to the future, we must first look back upon the past. That is where the seeds of the future were planted. I never think of the future. It comes soon enough. When a man is sufficiently motivated, discipline will take care of itself. Before God, we are all equally wise and equally foolish. Failure is only postponed success as long as courage coaches ambition. Feeling and longing are the motive forces behind all human endeavor and human creations. Only strong characters can resist the temptation of superficial analysis. Conceptions without experience are void. Experience without conceptions is blind. Weakness of attitude becomes weakness of character. The really valuable method of thought to arrive at a logically coherent system is intuition. Nothing happens until something moves. When something vibrates, the electrons of the entire universe resonate with it. Everything is connected. The chicken did not cross the road passed beneath the chicken. The future is of greater interest to me than the past, since that is where I intend to spend the rest of my life. If you are out to describe the truth, leave elegance to the tailor. The only real valuable thing is intuition. That which is impenetrable to us really exists. Behind the secrets of nature remains something subtle, intangible, and inexplicable. Veneration for this force beyond anything that we can comprehend is my religion. I assert that the cosmic religious experience is the strongest and the noblest driving force behind scientific research. To raise new questions, new possibilities, to regard old problems from a new angle requires creative imagination and marks real advance in science. Bear in mind that the wonderful things you learn in your schools are the work of many generations. All this is put in your hands as your inheritance in order that you may receive it, honor it, add to it, and one day faithfully hand it on to your children. Don't dream of being a good person. Be a human being is valuable and gives value to life. God does not play dice. Nationalism is an infantile disease. It is the measles of mankind. If you do the same thing over and over again, you cannot ever expect a different outcome. Keep fighting until the last buzzer sounds. Imagination without knowledge may create beautiful things. Knowledge without imagination can create only perfect ones. As I have said so many times, God doesn't play dice with the world. In my experience, the best creative work is never done when one is unhappy. I have tried 99 times and have failed, but on the 100th time came success. Politics is more difficult than physics. I have come to know the mutability of all human relationships and have learned to insulate myself against both heat and cold so that a temperature balance is fairly well assured. Human beings, vegetables, or cosmic dust, we all dance to a mysterious tune, intoned in the distance by an invisible piper. The gift of fantasy has meant more to me than my talent for absorbing positive knowledge. Is it not a terrible thing to be forced by society to do things which all of us as individuals regard as abominable crimes? Only one who devotes himself to a cause with his whole strength and soul can be a true master. For this reason, mastery demands all of a person. I believe in standardizing automobiles. I do not believe in standardizing human beings. Standardization is a great peril which threatens American culture. Only the one who does not question is safe from making a mistake. The world we have created is a product of our thinking. It almost seems to me that man was not born to be a carnivore. The leader is one who, out of the clutter, brings simplicity, out of discord, harmony, and out of difficulty, opportunity. Am I or the others crazy? We still do not know 1,000% of what nature has revealed to us. The real difficulty, the difficulty which has baffled the sages of all times, is rather this: how can we make our teaching so potent in the emotional life of man that its influence should withstand the pressure of the elemental psychic forces in the individual? Striving for social justice is the most valuable thing to do in life. Anger dwells only in the bosom of fools. Genius is when an idea and the execution of that idea are simultaneous. Empathy is patiently and sincerely seeing the world through the other person's eyes. It is not learned in school, it is cultivated over a lifetime. God is subtle, but he is not malicious. The led must not be compelled, they must be able to choose their own leader. He who can no longer pause to wonder and stand wrapped in awe is as good as dead. His eyes are closed. It is a very grave mistake to think that the enjoyment of seeing and searching can be promoted by means of coercion and a sense of duty. The pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, an almost fanatical love of justice, and the desire for personal independence, these are the features of the Jewish tradition which make me thank my stars that I belong to it. There are yet people who say there is no God, but what really makes me angry is that they quote me for the support of such views. There is separation of colored people from white people in the United States. That separation is not a disease of colored people. It is a disease of white people. I do not intend to be quiet about it. All I want to do is learn to think like God. All the rest is just details. Why should I remember anything if I can just look it up? You have to color outside the lines once in a while if you want to make your life a masterpiece. My religion consists of a humble admiration of the illimitable superior spirit who reveals himself in the slight details we are able to perceive with our frail and feeble mind. Knowledge is limited. Never lose a holy curiosity. We are all life trying to live, among other life trying to live. Whatever there is of God and goodness in the universe, it must work itself out and express itself through us. We cannot stand aside and let God do it. Formal symbolic representation of qualitative entities is doomed to its rightful place of minor significance in a world where flowers and beautiful women abound. I never said half the crap people said I did. It is not a lack of real affection that scares me away again and again from marriage. Is it a fear of the comfortable life, of nice furniture, of dishonor that I burden myself with, or even the fear of becoming a contented bourgeois? Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited to all we now know and understand, while imagination embraces the entire world and all there ever will be to know and understand. For an idea that does not first seem insane, there is no hope. Knowledge of what is does not open the door directly to what should be. Every kind of peaceful cooperation among men is primarily based on mutual trust and only secondarily on institutions such as courts of justice and police. Heroism on command, senseless violence, and all the loathsome nonsense that goes by the name of patriotism, how passionately I hate them. Compounding is the eighth wonder of the world. If I had an hour to solve a problem and my life depended on the solution, I would spend the first 55 minutes determining the proper question to ask. For once I know the proper question, I could solve the problem in less than 5 minutes. The pursuit of truth and beauty is a sphere of activity in which we are permitted to remain children all our lives. The basic laws of the universe are simple, but because our senses are limited, we can't grasp them. There is a pattern in creation. I have deep faith that the principle of the universe will be beautiful and simple. Small is the number of people who see with their eyes and think with their minds. No problem is ever solved in the same consciousness thought was used to create it. For me, the Jewish religion, like all other religions, is an incarnation of the most childish superstitions. My life is a simple thing that would interest no one. It is a known fact that I was born, and that is all that is necessary. If most of us are ashamed of shabby clothes and shoddy furniture, let us be more ashamed of shabby ideas and shoddy philosophies. Is it not better for a man to die for a cause in which he believes, such as peace, than to suffer for a cause in which he does not believe, such as war? I have no particular talent. I am merely inquisitive. Long hair minimizes the need for barbers. Socks can be done without. One leather jacket solves the coat problem for many years. Suspenders are superfluous. The secret to creativity is knowing how to hide your sources. Children don't heed the life experiences of their parents, and nations ignore history. Bad lessons always have to be learned anew. Let every man judge according to his own standards, by what he has himself read, not by what others tell him. Women marry men hoping they will change. Men marry women hoping they will not. This crippling of individuals I consider the worst evil of capitalism. Our whole educational system suffers from this evil. An exaggerated competitive attitude is inculcated into the student, who is trained to worship acquisitive success as a preparation for his future. I love to travel, but hate to arrive. Everyone sits in the prison of his own ideas. He must burst it open, and that in his youth, and so try to test his ideas on reality. Nothing truly valuable arises from ambition or from a mere sense of duty. It stems rather from love and devotion towards men and towards objective things. A person starts to live when he can live outside himself. Intellectuals solve problems, geniuses prevent them. Nonsense seems to sum up everything. Physical concepts are free creations of the human mind and are not, however it may seem, uniquely determined by the external world. Pure logical thinking cannot yield us any knowledge of the empirical world. All knowledge of reality starts from experience and ends in it. I believe the most important mission of the state is to protect the individual and make it possible for him to develop into a creative personality. I was sitting in a chair in the patent office at Bern when all of a sudden a thought occurred to me. If a person falls freely, he will not feel his own weight. I was startled. This simple thought made a deep impression on me. It impelled me toward a theory of gravitation. The state was made for man, not man for state. The restriction of knowledge to an elite group destroys the spirit of the society and leads to its intellectual impoverishment. I always found I was in the best of company, alone. Problems cannot be solved by thinking within the framework in which the problems were created. Matter is real to my senses, but they aren't trustworthy. If Galileo or Copernicus had accepted what they saw, they would never have discovered the movement of the Earth and planets. Nothing will end war unless the peoples themselves refuse to go to war. But love brings much happiness, much more so than pining brings pain. All that is valuable in human society depends upon the opportunity for development accorded the individual. It gives me great pleasure indeed to see the stubbornness of an incorrigible nonconformist warmly acclaimed. I want to go when I want. It is tasteless to prolong life artificially. I have done my share. It is time to go. I will do it elegantly. I believe, indeed, that overemphasis on the purely intellectual attitude, often directed solely to the practical and factual in our education, has led directly to the impairment of ethical values. In theory, theory and practice are the same. In practice, they are not. I didn't arrive at my understanding of the fundamental laws of the universe through my rational mind. Imagination rules the earth. My comprehension of God comes from a deeply felt conviction of a superior intelligence that reveals itself in the noble world. I find it difficult to believe that I belong to such an idiotic, rotten species, the species that actually boasts of its freedom of will, heroism on command, senseless violence, and all of the loathsome nonsense that goes by the name of patriotism. Time is an illusion. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. If you're not sure why you're doing something, you can never do enough of it. Imagination is more important than knowledge. True knowledge comes with deep understanding of a topic and its inner workings. I like to think the moon is there even if I am not looking at it. The most powerful force in the world is compound interest. Those who staying with the wrong reward, for example, stay in comfort zone, etc., long enough will get problem. God always takes the simplest way. Nationalism, on my opinion, is nothing more than an idealistic rationalization for militarism and aggression. You cannot simultaneously prevent and prepare for war. Pure mathematics is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas. Logical beauty spiritual formulas are discovered necessary for the deeper penetration into the laws of nature. Indeed, it is not intellect, but intuition which advances humanity. Intuition tells man his purpose in this life. As our circle of knowledge expands, so does the circumference of darkness surrounding it. What separates me from most so-called atheists is a feeling of utter humility toward the unattainable secrets of the harmony of the cosmos. If the rabble continues to occupy itself with you, then simply don't read that hogwash, but rather leave it for the reptile from whom it has been fabricated. The value of a man should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. Stand still, the trees ahead and bush beside you are not lost. Keep on sowing your seed, for you never know which will grow. Perhaps it all will. Imagination is more valuable than information. The pioneers of a warless world are the young men who refuse military service. One thing I have learned in a long life, that all our science, measured against reality, is primitive and childlike, and yet it is the most precious thing we have. It is impossible to get out of a problem by using the same kind of thinking that it took to get into it. A permanent peace cannot be prepared by threats, but only by the honest attempt to create a mutual trust. However strong national armaments may be, they do not create military security for any nation, nor do they guarantee the maintenance of peace. One does not make wars less likely by formulating rules of warfare. War cannot be humanized, it can only be eliminated. Communities tend to be guided less than individuals by conscience and a sense of responsibility. How much misery does this fact cause mankind? It is the source of wars and every kind of oppression, which fill the earth with pain, sighs, and bitterness. Anyone who thinks science is trying to make human life easier or more pleasant is utterly mistaken. If I can't picture it, I can't understand it. I have yet to figure out whether it is I am that am crazy or the world. What I see in nature is a magnificent structure that we can comprehend only very imperfectly, and that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. This is a genuinely religious feeling that has nothing to do with mysticism. The development of general ability for independent thinking and judgment should always be placed foremost, not the acquisition of special knowledge. After a certain high level of technical skill is achieved, science and art tend to coalesce in aesthetics, plasticity, and form. The greatest scientists are artists as well. Smoke like a chimney, work like a horse, eat without thinking, go for a walk only in really pleasant company. The most incomprehensible thing about the world is that it is comprehensible. Without deep reflection, one knows from daily life that one exists for other people. We know nothing at all. All our knowledge is but the knowledge of schoolchildren. The real nature of things we shall never know. It would be better if you began to teach others only after you yourself have learned something. The indifference, callousness, and contempt that so many people exhibit toward animals is evil, first because it results in great suffering in animals, and second because it results in an incalculably great impoverishment of the human spirit. True religion is real living, living with all one's soul, with all one's goodness and righteousness. We should take care not to make the intellect our God. It has, of course, powerful muscles, but no personality. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, so is a lot. Experience alone can decide on truth. I live my daydreams in music. Once you can accept the universe as matter expanding into nothing that is something, wearing stripes with plaid comes easy. The highest principles for our aspirations and judgments are given to us in the Jewish Christian religious tradition. Art is the expression of the profoundest thoughts in the simplest way. I prefer to make up my own quotes and attribute them to very smart people, so that I can use them to win arguments. Without changing our pattern of thought, we will not be able to solve the problems we created with our current patterns of thought. The man with the greatest soul will always face the greatest war with the low-minded person. Few people are capable of expressing with equanimity opinions which differ from the prejudices of their social environment. Most people are even incapable of forming such opinions. I am convinced there is only one way to eliminate these grave evils, namely through the establishment of a socialist economy, accompanied by an educational system which would be oriented towards social goals. A country cannot simultaneously prepare and prevent war. Cherish the questions, for the answers keep changing. The strongest force in the universe is compound interest. Never memorize something that you can look up. I soon learned to scent out that which was able to lead to fundamentals and to turn aside from everything else, from the multitude of things which clutter up the mind, and divert it from the essential. He who joyfully marches to music in rank and file has already earned my contempt. He has been given a large brain by mistake, since for him the spinal cord would suffice. The armament industry is indeed one of the greatest dangers that beset mankind. It is the hidden evil power. We must learn the difficult lesson that the future of mankind will only be tolerable when our course, in world affairs as in others, is based upon justice and law rather than the threat of naked power. We must not only learn to tolerate our differences, we must welcome them as the richness and diversity which can lead to true intelligence. The man of science is a poor philosopher. The ideals which have always shone before me and filled me with the joy of living are goodness, beauty, and truth. Show me a satisfied man, and I'll show you a failure. The world is not full of evil because of those who do wrong. It is full of evil because of those who do nothing. The bigotry of the non-believer is for me nearly as funny as the bigotry of the believer. What counts can't always be counted. What can be counted doesn't always count. I am satisfied with the mystery of the eternity of life. The most aggravating thing about the younger generation is that I no longer belong to it. Growth comes through analogy, through seeing how things connect, rather than only seeing how they might be different. In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity. People should be more like animals. They should be more intuitive. They should not be too conscious of what they do while they do it. Thinking is to man what flying is to birds. Don't follow the example of a chicken when you could be a lark. In any conflict between humanity and technology, humanity will win. The distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. I am not an atheist. I do not know if I can define myself as a pantheist. The problem involved is too vast for our limited minds. I like neither new clothes nor new kinds of food. More and more I come to value charity and love of one's fellow being above everything else. All our lauded technological progress, our very civilization, is like the axe in the hand of the pathological criminal. You cannot love a car the way you love a horse. The horse brings out human feelings the way machines cannot do. Things like machines may develop or neglect certain things in people. Machines make our life impersonal and stultify certain elements in us and create an impersonal environment. I am truly a lone traveler and have never belonged to my country, my home, my friends, or even my immediate family. With my whole heart, we are here for the sake of others. With all my heart, I believe that the world's present system of sovereign nations can only lead to barbarism, war, and inhumanity, and that only world law can assure progress towards a civilized, peaceful community. The distinctions separating the social classes are false. In the last analysis, they rest on force. One who scorns the power of intuition will never rise above the ranks of journeyman calculator. No one does anything right in life until they realize that they are making a mistake. Man, like every other animal, is by nature indolent. If nothing spurs him on, then he will hardly think and will behave from habit like an automaton. The thinking it took to get us into this mess is not the same thinking that is going to get us out of it. Time does not exist. We invented it. Great spirits have always found violent opposition from mediocre minds. The latter cannot understand it when a man does not thoughtlessly submit to hereditary prejudices, but honestly and courageously uses his intelligence. Scientists were rated as great heretics by the church, but they were truly religious men because of their faith in the orderliness of the universe. When forced to summarize the general theory of relativity in one sentence, time and space and gravitation have no separate existence from matter. But without deeper reflection, one knows from daily life that one exists for other people. First of all, for those upon whose smiles and well-being our own happiness is wholly dependent, and then for the many, unknown to us, to whose destinies we are bound by the ties of sympathy. I believe that the horrifying deterioration in the ethical conduct of people today stems from the mechanization and dehumanization of our lives, a disastrous byproduct of the development of the scientific and technical mentality. We are guilty. Man grows cold faster than the planet he inhabits. Marriage is but slavery made to appear civilized. Whoever is devoid of the capacity to wonder, whoever remains unmoved, whoever cannot contemplate or know the deep shudder of the soul in enchantment, might just as well be dead, for he has already closed his eyes upon life. There is no place in this new kind of physics both for the field and matter, for the field is the only reality. If I had 20 days to solve a problem, I would take 19 days to define it. As a human being, one has been endowed with just enough intelligence to be able to see clearly how utterly inadequate that intelligence is when confronted with what exists. I am not a genius, I am just curious. I ask many questions, and when the answer is simple, then God is answering. If men as individuals surrender to the call of their elementary instincts, avoiding pain and seeking satisfaction only for their own selves, the result for them all taken together must be a state of insecurity, of fear, and of promiscuous misery. In art and in the higher ranges of science, there is a feeling of harmony which underlies all endeavor. There is no true greatness in art or science without that sense of harmony. Balance in large measure is knowing the things that can be changed, putting them in proper perspective, and recognizing the things that will not change. I believe in intuition and inspiration. Imagination is more important than knowledge, for knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. It is, strictly speaking, a real factor in scientific research. Only the Catholic Church protested against the Hitlerian onslaught on liberty. Up till then I had not been interested in the Church, but today I feel a great admiration for the Church, which alone has had the courage to struggle for spiritual truth and moral liberty. If I could do it all again, I'd be a plumber. A new idea comes suddenly and in a rather intuitive way. But intuition is nothing but the outcome of earlier intellectual experience. The world as we see it is only the world as we see it. Others may see it differently. Formerly, people thought that if matter disappeared from the universe, space and time would remain. Relativity declares that space and time would disappear with matter. One should guard against preaching to young people success in the customary form as the main aim in life. The most important motive for work in school and in life is pleasure in work, pleasure in its result, and the knowledge of the value of the result to the community. Knowledge is dead. The school, however, serves the living. I have survived 2 wars, 2 wives, and Hitler. I became more and more convinced that even nature could be understood as a relatively simple mathematical structure. Failing isn't bad when you learn what not to do. To me, the worst thing seems to be a school principally to work with methods of fear, force, and artificial authority. Such treatment destroys the sound sentiments, the sincerity, and the self-confidence of pupils and produces a subservient subject. Common sense is the collection of prejudices acquired by age 18. I see my life in terms of music. I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it. There comes a time when the mind takes a higher plane of knowledge, but can never prove how it got there. The life of the individual has meaning only insofar as it aids in making the life of every living thing nobler and more beautiful. Life is sacred, that is to say, it is the supreme value to which all other values are subordinate. How do I work? I grope. Whoever undertakes to set himself up as a judge of truth and knowledge is shipwrecked by the laughter of the gods. In my view, it is the most important function of art and science to awaken this feeling and keep it alive in those who are capable of it. About Newton, nature to him was an open book, whose letters he could read without effort. The really valuable thing in the pageant of human life seems to me not the political state, but the creative, sentient individual. The personality, it alone creates the noble and the sublime, while the herd as such remains dull in thought and dull in feeling. Not all things worth counting are countable, and not all things that count are worth counting. I know that philosophically a murderer is not responsible for his crime, but I prefer not to take tea with him. One has a feeling that one has a kind of home in this timeless community of human beings that strive for truth. I have always believed that Jesus meant by the kingdom of God the small group scattered all through time of intellectually and ethically valuable people. A person experiences life as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Our task must be to free ourselves from this self-imposed prison and through compassion to find the reality of oneness. Each act is an island in time to be judged on its own. Man, surrounded by facts, permitting himself no surprise, no intuitive flash, no great hypothesis, no risk, is in a locked cell. Ignorance cannot seal the mind and imagination more securely. We must be prepared to make the same heroic sacrifices for the cause of peace that we make ungrudgingly for the cause of war. Physics is essentially an intuitive and concrete science. Mathematics is only a means for expressing the laws that govern phenomena. A man's ethical behavior should be based effectually on sympathy, education, and social ties and needs. No religious basis is necessary. Man would indeed be in a poor way if he had to be restrained by fear of punishment and hope of reward after death. Laws alone cannot secure freedom of expression. In order that every man present his views without penalty, there must be spirit of tolerance in the entire population. Understanding of our fellow human beings becomes fruitful only when it is sustained by sympathetic feelings in joy and sorrow. If you want to make your children brilliant, tell them fairy tales. If you want to make them more brilliant, tell them more fairy tales. Common sense is nothing more than a deposit of prejudices laid down by the mind before you reach 18. Pure mathematics is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas. It is my inner conviction that the development of science seeks in the main to satisfy the longing for pure knowledge. The years of searching in the dark for a truth that one feels but cannot express, the intense desire and the alternations of confidence and misgiving until one breaks through to clarity and understanding, are known only to him who has experienced them himself. What we don't know is much more than what we know. Imagination encircles the world. I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. The flag is a symbol of the fact that man is still a herd animal. It is nothing short of a miracle that modern methods of teaching have not yet entirely strangled that sacred spirit of curiosity and inquiry, for this delicate plant needs freedom no less than stimulation. The world is an evil place to live in, not for those who do evil, but for those who sit back and allow evil to occur. Most people go on living their everyday life, half frightened, half indifferent. They behold the ghostly tragic comedy that is being performed on the international stage before the eyes and ears of the world. The whole of science is nothing more than a refinement of everyday thinking. The tyranny of the ignoramuses is insurmountable and assured for all time. You can never solve a problem on the level on which it was created. Insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. A life lived for others is a life worthwhile. Figuring out how to think about the problem. The harmony of natural law reveals an intelligence of such superiority that, compared with it, all the systematic thinking and acting of human beings is an utterly insignificant reflection. I appeal to all men and women, whether they be eminent or humble, to declare that they will refuse to give any further assistance to war or the preparation of war. Joy in looking and comprehending is nature's most beautiful gift. For me, a simple message to think and act with courage, independence, and imagination. We must begin to inculcate our children against militarism by educating them in the spirit of pacifism. Our school books glorify war and conceal its horror. I would teach peace rather than war. All these constructions and the laws connecting them can be arrived at by the principle of looking for the mathematically simplest concepts and the link between them. The scientist is activated by a wonder and awe before the mysterious comprehensibility of the universe, which is yet finally beyond his grasp. In its profoundest depths, it is inaccessible to man. When I examine myself and my methods of thought, I come to the conclusion that the gift of fantasy has meant more to me than any talent for abstract, positive knowledge. The future is not a gift, it is an achievement. Most of the fundamental ideas of science are essentially simple and may, as a rule, be expressed in a language comprehensible to everyone. Beyond the realms of what we see, into the regions or the unexplored limited only by our imaginations. I have no extraordinary ability, I'm simply an inquisitive individual. Concepts that have proven useful in ordering things easily achieve such authority over us that we forget their earthly origins and accept them as unalterable givens. Strenuous intellectual work and the study of God's nature are the angels that will lead me through all the troubles of this life with consolation, strength, and uncompromising rigor. I am a determinist. As such, I do not believe in free will. Practically, I am, nevertheless, compelled to act as if freedom of the will existed. If I wish to live in a civilized community, I must act as if man is a responsible being. Most people stop looking when they find the proverbial needle in the haystack. I would continue looking to see if there were other needles. Opinions about obviousness are to a certain extent a function of time. What can the schools do to defend democracy? Should they preach a specific political doctrine? I believe they should not. If they are able to teach young people to have a critical mind and a socially oriented attitude, they will have done all that is necessary. Occurrences in this domain are beyond the reach of exact prediction because of the variety of factors in operation, not because of any lack of order in nature. The step between genius and insanity is very short. Time is what the clock says. If tomorrow were never to come, it would not be worth living today. Only a life lived for others is a life worthwhile. Fraulein Noether was the most significant creative mathematical genius thus far produced since the higher education of women began. Curiosity has its own reason for existence. A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts, and his feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. I know quite certainly that I myself have no special talent. Curiosity, obsession, and dogged endurance, combined with self-criticism, have brought me to my ideas. The formulation of the problem is often more essential than its solution, which may be merely a matter of mathematical or experimental skill. The most important human endeavor is the striving for morality in our actions. Relativity applies to physics, not ethics. If I were to remain silent, I'd be guilty of complicity. Imagination is the most powerful force in the universe. It is intelligent to have a plan, but neurotic to fall in love with it. Violence sometimes may have cleared away obstructions quickly, but it never has proved itself creative. Since the mathematicians have invaded the theory of relativity, I do not understand it myself anymore. Strange is our situation here on Earth. Each of us comes for a short visit, not knowing why, yet sometimes seeming to divine a purpose. Hail to the man who went through life always helping others, knowing no fear, and to whom aggressiveness and resentment are alien. Such is the stuff of which the great moral leaders are made. Genius simply cannot be reduced to a set of rules for anyone to follow. The world is so full of possibilities that dogmatism is simply indecent. Hunger, love, pain, fear are some of those inner forces which rule the individual's instinct for self-preservation. I shall never believe that God plays dice with the world. The opinion prevailed among advanced minds that it was time that belief should be replaced increasingly by knowledge. Belief that did not itself rest on knowledge was superstition, and as such had to be opposed. When the number of factors coming into play in a phenomenological complex is too large, scientific method in most cases fails. One need only think of the weather, in which case the prediction even for a few days ahead is impossible. I do not believe in race as such. Race is a fraud. All modern people are the conglomeration of so many ethnic mixtures that no pure race remains. Scientific research can reduce superstition by encouraging people to think and view things in terms of cause and effect. Sometimes one pays most for the things one gets for nothing. Manager solves problems, leader prevents them. Work is the only thing that gives substance to life. Rejoice with your family in the beautiful land of life. True art is characterized by an irresistible urge in the creative artist. The world we have made as a result of the level of thinking we have done thus far creates problems that we cannot solve at the same level at which we have created them. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if humankind is to survive. A tyranny based on deception and maintained by terror must inevitably perish from the poison it generates within itself. I made one great mistake in my life when I signed the letter to President Roosevelt recommending that atom bombs be made, but there was some justification the danger that the Germans would make them. It is only men who are free who create the inventions and intellectual works which to us moderns make life worthwhile. Science is the century-old endeavor to bring together by means of systematic thought the perceptible phenomena of this world into as thorough-going an association as possible. The health of society thus depends quite as much on the independence of the individuals composing it as on their close political cohesion. You can never solve a problem with the same kind of thinking that created the problem in the first place. Mere praise of peace is easy and ineffective. What is needed is a civic participation in the fight against war and everything which leads to it. I do not play games. There is not time for it. When I get through with work, I don't want anything that requires the working of the mind. Out of complexity, find simplicity. Great spirits often meet violent opposition with mediocre minds. The individual feels the futility of human desires and aims and the sublimity and marvelous order which reveal themselves both in nature and in the world of thought. To punish me for my contempt for authority, fate made me an authority myself. It stands to the everlasting credit of science that by acting on the human mind it has overcome man's insecurity before himself and before nature. I cannot accept any concept of God based on the fear of life, or the fear of death, or blind faith. I cannot prove to you that there is no personal God, but if I were to speak of him, I would be a liar. I want to know God's thoughts. As long as I have any choice in the matter, I shall live only in a country where civil liberty, tolerance, and equality of all citizens before the law prevail. I take it to be true that pure thought can grasp the real, as the ancients had dreamed. My pacifism is not based on any intellectual theory, but on a deep antipathy to every form of cruelty and hatred. Then there are the fanatical atheists whose intolerance is of the same kind as the intolerance of the religious fanatics and comes from the same source. Science has brought forth this danger, but the real problem is in the minds and hearts of men. The idle man does not know what it is to enjoy rest. Time is just something we invented to make motion seem simple. I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. I do not believe in the God of theology who rewards good and punishes evil. It is a magnificent feeling to recognize the unity of complex phenomena, which appear to be things quite apart from the direct visible truth. I cannot write in English because of the treacherous spelling. When I am reading, I only hear it and am unable to remember what the written word looks like. Man's will, sustained by an indomitable conviction, is much more powerful than material forces that seem insurmountable. Common sense is that layer of prejudices which we acquire before we are 16. I have not eaten enough of the tree of knowledge, though in my profession I am obligated to feed on it regularly. The American lives even more for his goals, for the future, than the European. Life for him is always becoming, never being. No, this trick won't work. How on earth are you ever going to explain in terms of chemistry and physics so important a biological phenomenon as first love? It is the theory which decides what we can observe. There is no logical way to the discovery of these elemental laws. There is only the way of intuition, which is helped by a feeling for the order lying behind the appearance. There is not the slightest indication that nuclear energy will ever be obtainable. It would mean that the atom would have to be shattered at will. Any brief military advantage the USA might gain with nuclear weapons would be offset by political and psychological losses and damage to American prestige. The United States might even touch off a worldwide armaments race. When I study philosophical works, I feel I am swallowing something which I don't have in my mouth. My scientific work is motivated by an irresistible longing to understand the secrets of nature and by no other feeling. My love for justice and striving to contribute towards the improvement of human conditions are quite independent from my scientific interests. The music of Mozart is of such purity and beauty that one feels he merely found it, that it has always existed as part of the inner beauty of the universe waiting to be revealed. I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men of our time. The most important question a person can ask is the universe a friendly place? We are all very ignorant. What happens is that not all ignore the same things. What I seek to accomplish is simply to serve with my feeble capacity truth and justice at the risk of pleasing no one. Creativity is the residue of time wasted. It followed from the special theory of relativity that mass and energy are both but different manifestations of the same thing. Concern for man and his fate must always form the chief interest of all technical endeavors. Never forget this in the midst of your diagrams and equations. Your fervent wishes can only find fulfillment if you succeed in attaining love and understanding of men and animals and plants and stars, so that every joy becomes your joy and every pain your pain. Everything what's inspiring has been created by one who could work in freedom. The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything save our modes of thinking, and we thus drift toward unparalleled catastrophe. The more success the quantum theory has, the sillier it looks. All men are ignorant, just in different fields. You cannot simultaneously prevent and prepare for war. The very prevention of war requires more faith, courage, and resolution than are needed to prepare for war. We must all do our share, that we may be equal to the task of peace. There exists a passion for comprehension, just as there exists a passion for music. That passion is rather common in children, but gets lost in most people later on. Without this passion, there would be neither mathematics nor natural science. The supreme task of the physicist is to arrive at those universal elementary laws from which the cosmos can be built up by pure deduction. There is no logical path to these laws, only intuition, resting on sympathetic understanding of experience, can reach them. A theory can be proved by experiment, but no path leads from experiment to the birth of a theory. Common sense invents and constructs no less than its own field than science does in its domain. It is, however, in the nature of common sense not to be aware of this situation. If I had my life to live over again, I would elect to be a trader of goods rather than a student of science. I think barter is a noble thing. External conditions can, to a certain extent, reduce, but never cancel individual responsibility. Imagination is more powerful than knowledge because knowledge is limited, but imagination is without boundaries. I am strongly drawn to a frugal life and am often oppressively aware that I am engrossing an undue amount of the labor of my fellow men. So long as there are men, there will be wars. I believe in standardizing automobiles, not human beings. The attempt to combine wisdom and power has only rarely been successful, and then only for a short while. It is high time the ideal of success should be replaced with the ideal of service. Combinatory play seems to be the essential feature in productive thought. The family that prays together ... is brainwashing their children. Everything that can be counted does not necessarily count. Everything that counts cannot necessarily be counted. Incompetence is the true crisis. I have always eaten animal flesh with a somewhat guilty conscience. The horizon of many people is a circle with a radius of 0. They call this their point of view. Nothing that I can do or say will change the structure of the universe, but maybe, by raising my voice, I can help the greatest of all causes, goodwill among men and peace on earth. I get the most joy in life out of music. I am fascinated by Spinoza's pantheism, but admire even more his contributions to modern thought because he is the first philosopher to deal with the soul and the body as one, not two separate things. Without the sense of fellowship with men of like mind, of preoccupation with the objective, the eternally unattainable in the field of art and scientific research, life would have seemed to me empty. If what is seen and experienced is portrayed in the language of logic, then it is science. If it is communicated through forms whose connections are not accessible to the conscious mind, but are recognized intuitively, then it is art. A man's moral worth is not measured by what his religious beliefs are, but rather by what emotional impulses he has received from nature during his lifetime. This is too difficult for a mathematician. It takes a philosopher. The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. If God has created the world, His primary worry was certainly not to make its understanding easy for us. Put your hand on a hot stove for a minute and it seems like an hour. Sit with a pretty girl for an hour and it seems like a minute. The laws of gravity cannot be held responsible for people falling in love. Our school books glorify war and conceal its horrors. They indoctrinate children with hatred. I would teach peace rather than war, love rather than hate. It is both auspicious and peaceful for people to choose vegetarianism. The mathematician knows some things, no doubt, but not those things one usually wants to get from him. One cannot learn so well as by experiencing it oneself. Nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and the law of the land than passing laws which cannot be enforced. Our entire much praised technological progress and civilization generally could be compared to an axe in the hand of a pathological criminal. If something is in me which can be called religious, then it is the unbounded admiration for the structure of the world so far as our science can reveal it. I never commit to memory anything that can easily be looked up in a book. The fanatical atheists are like slaves who are still feeling the weight of their chains, which they have thrown off after hard struggle. They are creatures who, in their grudge against traditional religion as the opium of the masses, cannot hear the music of the spheres. From a certain temperature on, the molecules condense without attractive forces. That is, they accumulate at zero velocity. The theory is pretty, but is there some truth in it? Only 6 men in the world know about relativity. I am not one of them. When I asked them to explain, they confused me. Play is the highest form of research. Nature shows us only the tail of the lion, but there is no doubt in my mind that the lion belongs with it, even if he cannot reveal himself to the eye all at once because of his huge dimension. Yes, we now have to divide up our time like that, between politics and our equations. But to me, our equations are far more important, for politics are only a matter of present concern. A mathematical equation stands forever. We believe that an informed citizenry will act for life and not for death. My pacifism is an instinctive feeling, a feeling that possesses me because the murder of men is disgusting. My attitude is not derived from any intellectual theory, but is based on my deepest antipathy to every kind of cruelty and hatred. It occurred to me by intuition, and music was the driving force behind that intuition. My discovery was the result of musical perception. Knowledge exists in 2 forms, lifeless, stored in books, and alive, in the consciousness of men. The second form of existence is after all the essential one. The first, indispensable as it may be, occupies only an inferior position. Everything has changed, except our way of thinking. The release of atomic energy has not created a new problem. It has merely made more urgent the necessity of solving an existing one. Numerous are the academic professors, but rare are wise and noble teachers. Epistemology without contact with science becomes an empty scheme. Science without epistemology is, insofar as it is thinkable, at all primitive and muddled. The ability to portray people in still life and in motion requires the highest measure of intuition and talent. He who cherishes the value of cultures cannot fail to be a pacifist. What really interests me is whether God had any choice in the creation of the world. We must remember that we do not observe nature as it actually exists, but nature exposed to our methods of perception. The theories determine what we can or cannot observe. Reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. Personally, I experience the greatest degree of pleasure in having contact with works of art. They furnish me with happy feelings of an intensity that I cannot derive from other sources. What use are socks? They only produce holes. Imagination is greater than knowledge. Even trivial events demonstrate strong devotion to the universe and small concern for ego. If a man aspires towards a righteous life, his first act of abstinence is from injury to animals. While you're trying to get ahead, remember to get a heart as well. When your only problem is a nail, all you want is a decent hammer. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. Humiliation and mental oppression by ignorant and selfish teachers wreak havoc in the youthful mind that can never be undone and often exert a baleful influence in later life. The strength of the Constitution lies entirely in the determination of each citizen to defend it. Only if every single citizen feels duty-bound to do his share in this defense are the constitutional rights secure. The more a country makes military weapons, the more insecure it becomes. If you have weapons, you become a target for attack. It is this mythical, or rather symbolic, content of the religious traditions which is likely to come into conflict with science. This occurs whenever this religious stock of ideas contains dogmatically fixed statements on subjects which belong in the domain of science. I'm not a genius, I'm just passionately curious. I have become rather like King Midas, except that everything turns not into gold but into a circus. It is humankind's duty to respect all life. Not only animals have feelings, but even also trees and plants. To get to know a country, you must have direct contact with the earth. It's futile to gaze at the world through a car window. Things you can get access to, you should never memorize. While it is true that an inherently free and scrupulous person may be destroyed, such an individual can never be enslaved or used as a blind tool. The right to search for truth implies also a duty. Schools need not preach political doctrine to defend democracy. If they shape men capable of critical thought and trained in social attitudes, that is all that is necessary. I have just got a new theory of eternity. I see in nature a magnificent structure that must fill a thinking person with a feeling of humility. It is always delightful when a great and beautiful idea proves to be consonant with reality. I do not believe that civilization will be wiped out in a war fought with the atomic bomb. Perhaps 2/3 of the people of the earth will be killed. Money only appeals to selfishness and always tempts its owners irresistibly to abuse it. Can anyone imagine Moses, Jesus, or Gandhi armed with the money bags of Carnegie? Mankind must give up war in the atomic era. What is at stake is the life or death of humanity. The hardest thing to understand in the world is the income tax. Education is what is left after you've forgotten everything you've learned. The trouble with the younger generation is that they don't stay young for very long. Conscious man, to be sure, has at all times been keenly aware that life is an adventure, that life must, forever, be wrested from death. Betterment of conditions the world over is not essentially dependent on scientific knowledge, but on the fulfillment of human traditions and ideals. It is just as important to make knowledge live and keep it alive as to solve specific problems. Each possession I own is but a stone around my neck. To understand the world, one must not be worrying about oneself. I think that only daring speculation can lead us further, and not accumulation of facts. Reason is intuition's servant. The ways of creation are wrapped in mystery. We may only marvel and bow our head. An attempt at visualizing the fourth dimension: take a point, stretch it into a line, curl it into a circle, twist it into a sphere, and punch through the sphere. If you cannot explain it simply, you do not understand it enough. To know what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty. This knowledge, this feeling is at the center of true religiousness. When I think of the most able students I have encountered in my teaching, I mean those who have distinguished themselves not only by skill, but by independence of thought, then I must confess that all have had a lively interest in epistemology. All religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree. I prefer an attitude of humility corresponding to the weakness of our intellectual understanding of nature and of our own being. The greatest knowledge a person can possess is the address of the local library. Wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. Older men start wars, but younger men fight them. Long live impudence. It was my guardian angel in this world. Mere thinking cannot reveal to us the highest purpose. That a man can take pleasure in marching in formation to the strains of a band is enough to make me despise him. He has only been given his big brain by mistake. A backbone was all he needed. When you are courting a nice girl, an hour seems like a second. When you sit on a red-hot cinder, a second seems like an hour. That's relativity. Compound interest on debt was the banker's greatest invention, to capture and enslave a productive society. The goal of pacifism is possible only through a supranational organization. To stand unconditionally for this cause is the criterion of true pacifism. Assumptions are made, and most assumptions are wrong. I think and think for months and years. 99 times, the conclusion is false. The 100th time I am right. Conviction is a good motive, but a bad judge. You cannot beat a roulette table unless you steal money from it. You see, wire telegraph is a kind of a very, very long cat. You pull his tail in New York and his head is meowing in Los Angeles. Do you understand this? And radio operates exactly the same way. You send signals here, they receive them there. The only difference is that there is no cat. One does people the best service by giving them some elevating work to do, and thus indirectly elevating them. It would be a sad situation if the bag was better than the meat wrapped in it. You ask me if I keep a notebook to record my great ideas. I've only ever had one. Science not only purifies the religious impulse of the dross of its anthropomorphism, but also contributes to a religious spiritualization of our understanding of life. One must console oneself with the thought that time has a sieve through which most of these important things run into the ocean of oblivion, and what remains after this selection is often still trite and bad. I would teach peace rather than war, love rather than hate. How can cosmic religious feeling be communicated from one person to another if it can give rise to no definite notion of a God and no theology? In my view, it is the most important function of art and science to awaken this feeling and keep it alive in those who are receptive to it. When Albert Einstein was asked what he would really like to know about the universe, he replied, "Is it friendly?" As an elderly man, I have remained estranged from the society here. I have repeatedly said that in my opinion the idea of a personal God is a childlike one. All religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree. All these aspirations are directed toward ennobling man's life, lifting it from the sphere of mere physical existence and leading the individual towards freedom. In the midst of difficulty lies opportunity. I do know that kind fate allowed me to find a couple of nice ideas after many years of feverish labor. Our task is to widen our circle of compassion to include all living beings and all of nature. The illusion that we are separate from one another is an optical delusion of our consciousness. So I am living without fats, without meat, without fish, but am feeling quite well this way. It always seems to me that man was not born to be a carnivore. Dancers are the athletes of God. You teach me baseball and I'll teach you relativity. No, we must not. You will learn about relativity faster than I learn baseball. When I was still a rather precocious young man, I already realized most vividly the futility of the hopes and aspirations that most men pursue throughout their lives. A brave man whose only fault was being a woman. The single most important decision any of us will ever make is whether or not to believe the universe is friendly. The only thing that you absolutely have to know is the location of the library. In every true searcher of nature there is a kind of religious reverence, for he finds it impossible to imagine that he is the first to have thought out the exceedingly delicate threads that connect his perceptions. The mind can proceed only so far upon what it knows and can prove. There comes a point where the mind takes a higher plane of knowledge, but can never prove how it got there. All great discoveries have involved such a leap. I asked myself childish questions and proceeded to answer them. My sense of God is my sense of wonder about the universe. Even the scholars in various lands have been acting as if their brains had been amputated. I think we have to safeguard ourselves against people who are a menace to others, quite apart from what may have motivated their deeds. It's no accident that capitalism has brought with it progress, not merely in production, but also in knowledge. Egoism and competition are, alas, stronger forces than public spirit and sense of duty. There are few enough people with sufficient independence to see the weaknesses and follies of their contemporaries and remain themselves untouched by them. I am doing just fine, considering that I have triumphantly survived nazism and 2 wives. I believe that pipe smoking contributes to a somewhat calm and objective judgment in all human affairs. Science is the attempt to make the chaotic diversity of our sense experience correspond to a logically uniform system of thought. Man would indeed be in a poor way if he had to be restrained by fear of punishment and hope of reward after death. There will come a point in everyone's life, however, where only intuition can make the leap ahead without ever knowing precisely how. One can never know why, but one must accept intuition as a fact. War cannot be humanized, it can only be abolished. Insofar as we may at all claim that slavery has been abolished today, we owe its abolition to the practical consequences of sighing. The most difficult part about understanding something is that we understand it all. It would be foolish to despise tradition, but with our growing self-consciousness and increasing intelligence, we must begin to control tradition and assume a critical attitude toward it if human relations are ever to change for the better. The essentials of being a person of my type lies precisely in what they think and how they think, not in what they do. Your thoughts shape you. I regard class differences as contrary to justice and, in the last resort, based on force. The foundation of morality should not be made dependent on myth nor tied to any authority, lest doubt about the myth or about the legitimacy of the authority imperil the foundation of sound judgment and action. Inner freedom is an infrequent gift of nature and a worthy object for the individual. The most evident difference springs from the important part which is played in man by a relatively strong power of imagination and by the capacity to think, aided as it is by language and other symbolically devices. Gravitation is not responsible for people falling in love. Human knowledge and skills alone cannot lead humanity to a happy and dignified life. Humanity has every reason to place the proclaimers of high moral standards and values above the discoverers of objective truth. Everybody acts not only under external compulsion, but also in accordance with inner necessity. Common sense needs constant reappraisal. What I see in nature is a grand design that we can understand only imperfectly, one with which a responsible person must look at with humility. Mysticism is in fact the only criticism people cannot level against my theory. The number of natural hypotheses that can explain any given phenomena is infinite. The only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen at once. The theory must not contradict empirical facts. The facts, although interesting, are irrelevant. Organized people are just too lazy to go looking for what they want. Only a very dull man spells a word the same way twice. To be sure, the doctrine of a personal God interfering with natural events could never be refuted, in the real sense, by science, for this doctrine can always take refuge in those domains in which scientific knowledge has not yet been able to set foot. It is not so important where one settles down. The best thing is to follow your instincts without too much reflection. The truth isn't always a blinding light. Sometimes it's a deep and dazzling darkness that illuminates and burns just as surely. In the middle of adversity, there is great opportunity. Philosophers play with the word, like a child with a doll. It does not mean that everything in life is relative. It is important to foster individuality, for only the individual can produce the new ideas. It is also a natural thing for a serious young man that he should form for himself as precise an idea as possible of the goal of his desires. Without the sense of fellowship with men of like mind, life would have seemed to me empty. Good acts are like good poems. One may easily get their drift, but they are not rationally understood. We cannot despair of humanity, since we ourselves are human beings. The difference between what the most and the least learned people know is inexpressibly trivial in relation to that which is unknown. Science has gone a long way toward helping man to free himself from the burden of hard labor, yet science itself is not a liberator. It creates means, not goals. It is up to men to utilize those means to achieve reasonable goals. What you can't imagine, you can't discover. If I were to start taking care of my grooming, I would no longer be my own self. When I was young, all I wanted and expected from life was to sit quietly in some corner doing my work without the public paying attention to me, and now see what has become of me. I believe that the first step in the setting of a real external world is the formation of the concept of bodily objects and of bodily objects of various kinds. Those who believe that politics and religion do not mix understand neither. Some men spend a lifetime in an attempt to comprehend the complexities of women. Others preoccupy themselves with somewhat simpler tasks, such as understanding the theory of relativity. How vile and despicable war seems to me. I would rather be hacked to pieces than take part in such an abominable business. I believe in intuition and inspiration. At times I feel certain I am right, while not knowing the reason. What is significant in one's own existence one is hardly aware, and it certainly should not bother the other fellow. What does a fish know about the water in which he swims all his life? Where the world ceases to be the scene of our personal hopes and wishes, where we face it as free beings admiring, asking and observing, there we enter the realm of art and science. What the individual can do is to give a fine example and to have the courage to uphold ethical values in a society of cynics. Man owes his strength in the struggle for existence to the fact that he is a social animal. I am not only a pacifist, but a militant pacifist. I am willing to fight for peace. Nothing will end war unless the people themselves refuse to go to war. Despite my being an old gypsy, there is a tendency to respectability inherent in old age. The more one chases the quanta, the better they hide themselves. I now see the necessity of a beginning. In the shadow of the atomic bomb, it has become even more apparent that all men are, indeed, brothers. Intuitive powers played a central role in my scientific work, not wild speculation, yet a valued resource when no other approach was available. In the matter of physics, the first lessons should contain nothing but what is experimental and interesting to see. A pretty experiment is in itself often more valuable than 20 formulae extracted from our minds. Though our conduct seems so very different from that of the higher animals, the primary instincts are much alike in them and in us. Curiosity is a delicate little plant that, aside from stimulation, stands mainly in need of freedom. The most important method of education always has consisted of that in which the pupil was urged to actual performance. The stakes are immense, the task colossal, the time is short, but we must hope, that man's own creation, man's own genius, will not destroy him. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. He to whom the realm of the spirit for your own personal joy and to the profit of the community to which your later work belongs. I consider it important, indeed urgently necessary, for intellectual workers to get together, both to protect their own economic status and also, generally speaking, to secure their influence in the political field. As for the search for truth, I know from my own painful searching, with its many blind alleys, how hard it is to take a reliable step, be it ever so small, towards the understanding of that which is truly significant. The faster you go, the shorter you are. I cannot conceive of a personal God who would directly influence the actions of individuals, or would directly sit in judgment on creatures of his own creation. Don't second-guess the mistakes you've made. Others will do that for you. Make things as simple as possible, but not simpler. My only genius talent is inquisitiveness. A woman is always right, but sometimes confused or maybe misinformed or rude or stubborn or senseless or unchangeable about her opinions, or even downright stupid at times, but never wrong. She is always right. I agree with Schopenhauer that one of the most powerful motives that attracts people to science and art is the longing to escape from everyday life. The beauty of it is that we have to content ourselves with the recognition of the miracle, beyond which there is no legitimate way out. God has given me a mule-like stubbornness to stick with a difficult problem and the intuitive powers to conceptualize complex hypothetical situations in my mind. The creative scientist studies nature with the rapt gaze of the lover and is guided as often by aesthetics as by rational considerations in guessing how nature works. The Nuremberg trial of the German war criminals was tacitly based on the recognition of the principle, criminal actions cannot be excused if committed on government orders. Conscience supersedes the authority of the law of the state. Out yonder there is this huge world, which exists independently of us human beings and which stands before us like a great, eternal riddle, at least partially accessible to our inspection and thinking. Regarding sex education, no secrets. Time is relative. Its only worth depends upon what we do as it is passing. Degeneracy follows every autocratic system of violence, for violence inevitably attracts moral inferiors. Time has proven that illustrious tyrants are succeeded by scoundrels. Information is not knowledge. The most beautiful experience in the world is the experience of the mysterious. Only a monomaniac gets anything done. Thought is the organizing factor in man, intersected between the causal primary instincts and the resulting actions. It should be possible to explain the laws of physics to a barmaid. Each of us visits this earth involuntarily and without an invitation. For me, it is enough to wonder at the secrets. I have made no secret, either privately or publicly, of any sense of outrage over officially enforced military and war service. I regard it as a duty of conscience to fight against such barbarous enslavement of the individual with every means available. Watch the stars and from them learn. Happiness as a pursuit is suitable only for pigs. How I wish that somewhere there existed an island for those who are wise and of goodwill. The majority of the stupid is invincible and guaranteed for all time. The terror of their tyranny, however, is alleviated by their lack of consistency. You are right in speaking of the moral foundations of science, but you cannot turn around and speak of the scientific foundations of morality. For every 1 billion particles of antimatter, there were 1,000,000,001 particles of matter, and when the mutual annihilation was complete, 1 billionth remained, and that's our present universe. Science is a wonderful thing if one does not have to earn one's living at it. One should earn one's living by work of which one is sure one is capable. Only when we do not have to be accountable to anybody can we find joy in scientific endeavor. My only refuge as a serious young man from the despair of my financial burden to my family is that I did everything I could to never permit myself any amusements or diversions except those afforded by my studies. If you've never failed, you've never tried anything new. Analytics will never tell you everything you want to know. The field is the sole influence of the particle. We can invent as many theories we like, and any one of them can be made to fit the facts, but that theory is always preferred which makes the fewest number of assumptions. I make it a rule not to clutter my mind with simple information that I can find in a book in 5 minutes. Fortunate Newton, happy childhood of science. Nature to him was an open book. He stands before us strong, certain, and alone. All such action would cease if those powerful elemental forces were to cease stirring within us. The road to perdition has ever been accompanied by lip service to an ideal. Man can find meaning in life only through devoting himself to society. In every true searcher of nature there is a kind of religious reverence. In one's youth every person and every event appear to be unique. With age one becomes much more aware that similar events recur. Later on, one is less often delighted or surprised, but also less disappointed than in earlier years. An evening, everyone agrees, is a lost evening. Anonymity is no excuse for stupidity. The greatest tragedy of human existence is the illusion of separateness. It would be possible to describe everything scientifically, but it would make no sense. It would be without meaning, as if you described a Beethoven symphony as a variation of wave pressure. How can he possibly be humble? He hasn't done anything yet. As far as the laws of mathematics refer to reality, they are not certain, and as far as they are certain, they do not refer to reality. The solitude and peace of mind are serving me quite well, not the least of which is due to the excellent and truly enjoyable relationship with my cousin. Its stability will be guaranteed by the avoidance of marriage. Now to the term relativity theory. I admit that it is unfortunate and has given occasion to philosophical misunderstandings. Well-being and happiness never appeared to me as an absolute aim. I am even inclined to compare such moral aims to the ambitions of a pig. Qualities I sought in a scientific theory were naturalness, inner perfection, and logical simplicity from an aesthetic approach. One picture is worth 1,000 words. My intellectual development was retarded, as a result of which I began to wonder about space and time only when I had already grown up. All means prove but blunt instruments if they have not behind them a living spirit. The man who regards his own life and that of his fellow creatures as meaningless is not merely unfortunate, but almost disqualified for life. This is what the painter, the poet, the speculative philosopher, and the natural scientists do, each in his own fashion. Infinite striving to be the best is man's duty. It is its own reward. Everything else is in God's hands. It's not that I'm so smart, it's just that I stay with problems longer. Anyone can be a genius if they pick just one specific subject and study it diligently just 15 minutes each day. The grand aim of all science is to cover the greatest number of empirical facts by logical deduction from the smallest number of hypotheses or axioms. The world will not evolve past its current state of crisis by using the same thinking that created the situation. All our thinking is of this nature, of free play with concepts. Scientists believe that every occurrence, including the affairs of human beings, is due to the laws of nature. Therefore, a scientist cannot be inclined to believe that the course of events can be influenced by prayer, that is, by a supernaturally manifested wish. When a blind beetle crawls over the surface of a globe, he doesn't notice that the track he has covered is curved. I was lucky enough to have spotted it. Subtle is the Lord, malicious he is not. A world government with powers adequate to guarantee security is not a remote ideal for the distant future. It is an urgent necessity if our civilization is to survive. I have lived to prove Thoreau's contention that a man is rich in proportion to the number of things which he can afford to let alone. The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything except our thinking. Thus, we are drifting toward catastrophe beyond conception. We shall require a substantially new manner of thinking if mankind is to survive. It is my belief that the problem of bringing peace to the world on a supranational basis will be solved only by employing Gandhi's method on a larger scale. The word God is for me nothing more than the expression and product of human weaknesses. My position concerning God is that of an agnostic. Chess holds its master in its own bonds, shackling the mind and brain so that the inner freedom of the very strongest must suffer. To dwell on the things that depress or anger us does not help in overcoming them. One must knock them down alone. I know little about nature and hardly anything about men. There does, in fact, appear to be a plan. History is littered with examples of men who would become gods, but only one example of God becoming man. Had I known that the Germans would not succeed in producing an atomic bomb, I would not have lifted a finger. The words of language, as they are written or spoken, do not seem to play any role in my mechanism of thought. The physical entities which seem to serve as elements in thought are certain signs and more or less clear images. There is no salvation for civilization or even the human race other than the creation of a world government. The aim of science is, on the one hand, as complete a comprehension as possible of the connection between perceptible experiences in their totality, and, on the other hand, the achievement of this aim by employing a minimum of primary concepts and relations. The significant problems we have cannot be solved at the same level of thinking with which we created them. Life is like a bicycle, keep moving on to maintain balance. So would a being endowed with higher insight and more perfect intelligence, watching man and his doings, smile about man's illusion that he was acting according to his own free will. To take those fools in clerical garb seriously is to show them too much honor. If only I had known, I should have become a watchmaker. The greatest scientists are artists as well. I have reached an age where if someone tells me to wear socks, I don't have to. The wing structure of the hornet, in relation to its weight, is not suitable for flight, but he does not know this and flies anyway. If they want to see me, here I am. If they want to see my clothes, open my closet and show them my suits. Without creative, independently thinking and judging personalities, the upward development of society is as unthinkable as the development of the individual personality without the nourishing soil of the community. You can't resolve a dilemma with all the very same mind that made it. You can't solve problems with the same thinking that caused them. From the viewpoint of a Jesuit priest, I am, of course, and have always been an atheist. Thanks to my fortunate idea of introducing the relativity principle into physics, you now enormously overrate my scientific abilities to the point where this makes me quite uncomfortable. People are like bicycles. They can keep their balance only as long as they keep moving. Politics is far more complicated than physics. At present, every coachman and every waiter argues about whether or not the relativity theory is correct. It is my conviction that killing under the cloak of war is nothing but an act of murder. Those who have an interest in keeping the machinery of war going will stop at nothing to make public opinion subservient to their murderous ends. A successful man is he who receives a great deal from his fellow men, usually incomparably more than corresponds to his service to them. The value of a man, however, should be seen in what he gives and not in what he is able to receive. This is a time when there seems to be a particular need for friends of wisdom and truth to join together. A table, a chair, a bowl of fruit, and a violin. What else does a man need to be happy? Every reminiscence is colored by the way things are today, and therefore by a delusive point of view. Man is, at one and the same time, a solitary being and a social being. I simply imagine it so, then go about to prove it. It is easy to say something new if all senses one will eschew, but hardly ever is found that the new is also sound. Do things sound better in your head before you say them, or do you even run them through there first? One always likes to do the things for which one has ability. Creativity is inspiration having fun. I have become an obstinate heretic in the eyes of my colleagues. Momentary success carries more power of conviction than reflections upon principles. We must dedicate our lives to drying up the source of war, ammunition factories. The trite objects of human efforts, possessions, superficial success, luxury have always seemed contemptible to me. I have also considered many scientific plans during my pushing you around in your pram. Time flies when you are having fun. If one studies too zealously, one easily loses his pants. How insidious nature is when one is trying to get at it experimentally. Science will stagnate if it is made to serve practical goals. My success wasn't so much due to intelligence, but the fact that I stuck with problems longer. If there is no price to be paid, it is also not of value. Not until we dare to regard ourselves as a nation, not until we respect ourselves, can we gain the esteem of others, or rather only then will it come of its own accord. Do not grow old, no matter how long you live. The desire for truth must take precedence over all other desires. The only real valuable thing is intuition. The intellect has little to do on the road to discovery. Even if only 2% of those assigned to perform military service should announce their refusal to fight, governments would be powerless. They would not dare send such a large number of people to jail. There is, however, a somber point in the social outlook of Americans. Their sense of equality and human dignity is mainly limited to people of white skin. The more I feel like an American, the more the situation pains me. I urge a willingness to reserve a place in rational science for non-rational wonder. Hope that justice will be done to those brave men who stood up for their convictions. Nothing happens till something moves. I do not like to state an opinion on a matter unless I know the precise facts. Those instrumental goods which should serve to maintain the life and health of all human beings should be produced by the least possible labor of all. There's something to be said for relatives ... It has to be said because it's unprintable. Science can only state what is, not what should be. If you took half of something and continued to take half of that half, and so on, you would never reach an end. A theory is something nobody believes, except the person who made it. An experiment is something everybody believes, except the person who made it. To stimulate creativity, one must develop childlike inclination for play and the childlike desire for recognition. From discord, find harmony. Without ethical culture, there is no salvation for humanity. I have firmly decided to bite the dust with a minimum of medical assistance when my time comes, and up to then to sin to my wicked heart's content. Relativity is a purely scientific matter and has nothing to do with religion. In science, moreover, the work of the individual is so bound up with that of his scientific predecessors and contemporaries that it appears almost as an impersonal product of his generation. I never think of the future. It comes soon enough when visiting the US from Germany for a winter academic stay. The gravity is the first thing which you don't think. But then, after all, we are all alike, for we are all derived from the monkey. The genius is in making the complex simple. There is an atmosphere of well-sounding oratory that likes to attach itself to dress clothes. Away with it. The place of the expert is on tap, not on top. The solution to this problem lies in the heart of mankind. Don't let the measurable drive out the relevant. Einstein didn't speak until he was 4, leading most of his teachers to believe he was crazy. That is until he whipped out the theory of relativity. BAYUM showed you guys. The moon does not simply disappear when we are not looking at it. One must take what nature gives as one finds it. It is true that my parents were worried because I began to speak fairly late, so that they even consulted a doctor. I can't say how old I was, but surely not less than 3. People start their lives at last when they are able to live for something other than themselves. One strength of the communist system of the East is that it has some of the character of a religion and inspires the emotions of a religion. A desk, some pads, a pencil, and a large basket to hold all of my mistakes. By academic freedom, I understand the right to search for truth and to publish and teach what one holds to be true. This right also implies a duty. One must not conceal any part of what one has recognized to be true. I received your letter of June 10th. I have never talked to a Jesuit priest in my life, and I am astonished by the audacity to tell such lies about me. From the viewpoint of a Jesuit priest, I am, of course, and have always been an atheist. Do you really believe that the moon isn't there when nobody looks? Don't do anything that goes against your conscience, even if your country says so. Life is a mystery, not a problem waiting to be solved. Human beings, in their thinking, feeling, and acting are not free agents but are as causally bound as the stars in their motion. For the most part, I do the thing which my own nature prompts me to do. It is embarrassing to earn so much respect and love for it. It is not by sitting still at a grand distance and calling the human race larvae that men are to be helped. How can it be that mathematics, being after all a product of human thought, which is independent of experience, is so admirably appropriate to the objects of reality? Culture in its higher forms is a delicate plant which depends on a complicated set of conditions and is wont to flourish only in a few places at any given time. We must recognize what in our accepted tradition is damaging to our fate and dignity and shape our lives accordingly. To be sure, it is not the fruits of scientific research that elevate a man and enrich his nature, but the urge to understand, the intellectual work, creative or receptive. To the extent math refers to reality, we are not certain. To the extent we are certain, math does not refer to reality. But the creative principle resides in mathematics. In a certain sense, therefore, I hold true that pure thought can grasp reality, as the ancients dreamed. You cannot prevent and prepare for war at the same time. Capitalism has brought with it progress, not merely in production, but also in knowledge. The leaves and the light are one. Physics is an attempt conceptually to grasp reality as something that is considered to be independent of its being observed. In this sense, one speaks of physical reality. Intelligent life on other planets, I'm not even sure there is on Earth. A problem cannot be solved at the level of consciousness in which it occurs. A model should be as simple as it can be, but no simpler. It is the theory that decides what can be observed. The daily struggle does not arise from a purpose or a program, but from an immediate need. A man has to work so hard so that something of his personality stays alive. A tomcat has it so easy, he has only to spray, and his presence is there for years on rainy days. I do not much believe in education. Each person ought to be his or her own model, however frightful that may be. What is essential in the life of a man of my kind is what he thinks and how he thinks, and not what he does or suffers. It is really a puzzle what drives one to take one's work so devilishly seriously. Each ray of light moves in the coordinate system at rest with the definite, constant velocity v independent of whether this ray of light is emitted by a body at rest or a body in motion. It is impossible to get anywhere without sinning against reason. Almost all the other fellows do not look from the facts to the theory, but from the theory to the facts. They cannot get out of the network of already accepted concepts. Instead, comically, they only wriggle about inside. The world we have made is a result of the level of thinking we have done thus far. It is the duty of every citizen according to his best capacities to give validity to his convictions in political affairs. New frameworks are like climbing a mountain. The larger view encompasses rather than rejects the more restricted view. Science is a wonderful thing if one does not have to earn one's living at it. Don't be too hard on me. Everyone has to sacrifice at the altar of stupidity from time to time. It was the experience of mystery, even if mixed with fear, that engendered religion. One may say the eternal mystery of the world is its comprehensibility. To the master's honor all must turn, each in its track, without a sound, forever tracing Newton's ground. It is our American habit, if we find the foundations of our educational structure unsatisfactory, to add another story or wing. I believe my theory of relativity to be true, but it will only be proved for certain in 1981, when I am dead. Scarcely anyone who comprehends this theory can escape its magic. No fairer destiny could be allotted to any physical theory than that it should of itself point out the way to the introduction of a more comprehensive theory, in which it lives on as a limiting case. When you are courting a nice girl, an hour seems like a second. The series of integers is obviously an invention of the human mind, a self-created tool which simplifies the ordering of certain sensory experiences. Our defense is not in our armaments, nor in science, nor in going underground. Our defense is in law and order. Brief is this existence, as a visit in a strange house. The path to be pursued is poorly lit by a flickering consciousness. What is inconceivable about the universe is that it is at all conceivable. Everybody should be ashamed who uses the wonders of science and engineering without thinking and having mentally realized not more of it than a cow realizes of the botany of the plants which it eats with pleasure. The problems of today can only be solved at a higher level of thinking than that which created them. Man has an intense desire for assured knowledge. I know what it's like to see one's mother go through the agony of death and be unable to help. There is no consolation. We all have to bear such heavy burdens, for they are unalterably linked to life. Although I try to be universal in thought, I am European by instinct and inclination. It is strange to be known so universally and yet to be so lonely. You can never solve a problem on the level on which it was created. People love chopping wood. In this activity, one immediately sees results. Even on the most solemn occasions, I got away without wearing socks and hid that lack of civilization in high boots. I thought of that while riding my bicycle. Everyone must become their own person, however frightful that may be. Germany had the misfortune of becoming poisoned, first because of plenty, and then because of want. It's very depressing to live in a time where it's easier to break an atom than a prejudice. I would not think that philosophy and reason themselves will be man's guide in the foreseeable future. However, they will remain the most beautiful sanctuary they have always been for the select few. Something deeply hidden had to be behind things. To my mind, to kill in war is not a whit better than to commit ordinary murder. Freedom of teaching and of opinion in book or press is the foundation for the sound and natural development of any people. We all try to escape pain and death while we seek what is pleasant. One lives one's life under constant tension until it's time to go for good. The environment is everything that isn't me. one must not attempt to justify them, but rather to sense their nature simply and clearly. In the middle of difficulties lie opportunities. The splitting of the atom has changed everything except for how we think. People like you and I, though mortal of course like everyone else, do not grow old no matter how long we live. I have to apologize to you that I am still among the living. There will be a remedy for this, however. I cannot imagine a God who rewards and punishes the objects of his creation and is but a reflection of human frailty. I see only with deep regret that God punishes so many of his children for their numerous stupidities, for which only he himself can be held responsible. In my opinion, only his non-existence could excuse him. The idea of a being who interferes with the sequence of events in the world is absolutely impossible. It is a precarious undertaking to say anything reliable about aims and intentions. Compound interest is the eighth natural wonder of the world and the most powerful thing I have ever encountered. If I had known they were going to do this, I would have become a shoemaker. Overpopulation in various countries has become a serious threat to the health of people and a grave obstacle to any attempt to organize peace on this planet. Innovation is not the product of logical thought, even though the final product, T, is tied to a logical structure. I am an absolute pacifist. It is an instinctive feeling. It is a feeling that possesses me, because the murder of men is disgusting. Classical thermodynamics is the only physical theory of universal content which I am convinced will never be overthrown. As long as there are sovereign nations possessing great power, war is inevitable. Creativity is one of those hypnotic words which are prone to cast a spell upon our understanding and dissolve our thinking into haze. In scientific thinking are always present elements of poetry. Science and music requires a thought homogeneous. What I'm really interested in is whether God could have made the world in a different way. That is, whether the necessity of logical simplicity leaves any freedom at all. I refuse to make money out of my science. My laurel is not for sale like so many bales of cotton. If a theory cannot be explained to a child, then the theory is probably worthless. It is my fate to be considered an authority, since I spent my youth rebelling against it. The pursuit of knowledge is more valuable than its possession. The comprehensibility of the world seems to me a wonder or eternal secret. Here lies the sense of wonder which increases even more with the development of our knowledge. The greatest activity of which man is capable, opening up yet another fragment of the frontier of beauty. I used to go away for weeks in a state of confusion. If I could remember the names of all these particles, I'd be a botanist. It is an outcome of faith that nature as she is perceptible to our five senses takes the character of such a well-formulated puzzle. The conscientious objector is a revulsionary. On deciding to disobey the law, he sacrifices his personal interest to the most important cause of working for the betterment of society. I am not more gifted than anybody else. I am just more curious than the average person, and I will not give up a problem until I have found the proper solution. The great moral teachers of humanity were in a way artistic geniuses in the art of living. You believe in a God who plays dice, I in complete law and order. They come into being not through demonstration, but through revelation, through the medium of powerful personalities. The finest emotion of which we are capable is the mystic emotion. Everyone likes me, yet nobody understands me. The first and most important necessity is the creation of a modus vivendi with the Arab people. Science is the process of making obviously erroneous ideas less obviously erroneous. The fear of death is the most unjustified of all fears, for there's no risk of accident for someone who's dead. It is my view that the vegetarian manner of living, by its purely physical effect on the human temperament, would most beneficially influence the lot of mankind. Falling in love is not at all the most stupid thing that people do, but gravitation cannot be held responsible for it. If the bees disappear, man would have only 4 years of life left. Unlimited competition leads to a huge waste of labor and to that crippling of the social consciousness of individuals. I owe as much of my success to an uncompromising obstinacy as to any original ideas. One ought to be ashamed to make use of the wonders of science embodied in a radio set, the while appreciating them as little as a cow appreciates the botanic marvels in the plants she munches. No one but a theorist believes his theory. Everyone puts faith in a laboratory result, but the experimenter himself. No matter how we may single out a complex from nature, its theoretical treatment will never prove to be ultimately conclusive. I believe that this process of deepening of theory has no limits. Make a lot of walks to get healthy and don't read that much, but save yourself some until you're grown up. There has been an earth for a little more than 1 billion years. As for the question of the end of it, I advise, wait and see. I never failed in mathematics. Before I was 15, I had mastered differential and integral calculus. The idea of achieving security through national armament is, at the present state of military technique, a disastrous illusion. Since others have explained my theory, I can no longer understand it myself. To me, it is enough to wonder at the secrets. When I'm judging a theory, I ask myself whether, if I were God, I would have arranged the world in such a way. To put it boldly, it is the attempt at a posterior reconstruction of existence by the process of conceptualization. The contemplation of this world beckoned like a liberation. Every day, man is making bigger and better foolproof things, and every day, nature is making bigger and better fools. So far, I think nature is winning. If we have the courage to decide ourselves for peace, we will have peace. I do not believe in a personal God, and I have never denied this, but have expressed it clearly. Galileo, the father of modern physics, indeed of modern science, check out not to become a man or woman of achievement, but instead seek to become a particular person of price. You cannot solve current problems with current thinking. Current problems are the result of current thinking. For scientific endeavor is a natural whole, the parts of which mutually support one another in a way which, to be sure, no one can anticipate. I have always loved solitude, a trait which tends to increase with age. A problem defined is a problem half solved. The normal objective of my thought affords no insight into the dark places of human will and feeling. The great need to grasp principles had caused me to spend most of my time on fruitless pursuits. As long as there will be a man, there will be wars. The war is won, but the peace is not. You believe in a God that plays dice. I believe in law and order. Unless the cause of peace based on law gathers behind it the force and zeal of a religion, it hardly can hope to succeed. The question that drives me hazy is whether it is I or others who is crazy. The woman who follows the crowd will usually believe that I said this. I believe that whatever we do or lie for has its causality. It is good, however, that we cannot see through to it. Man usually avoids attributing cleverness to somebody else unless it is an enemy. I must try, however, as best I can, although I am very conscious of the fact that our feelings and strivings are often contradictory and obscure, and that they cannot be expressed in easy and simple formulas. My scientific work is motivated by an irresistible longing to understand the secrets of nature, not by other feelings. The only way to escape the corruptible effect of praise is to go on working. I have always disliked the fierce competitive spirit embodied in that highly intellectual gang. The scientist finds his reward in what Henry Poincare calls the joy of comprehension, and not in the possibility of application to which any discovery may lead. A human being is part of a whole called by us the universe. At the same time, as social beings, we are moved in the relations with our fellow beings by such feelings as sympathy, pride, hate, need for power, pity, and so on. It is a very high goal which, with our weak powers, we can reach only very inadequately, but which gives a sure foundation to our aspirations and valuations. Just as with the man in the fairy tale who turned whatever he touched into gold, with me everything is turned into newspaper clamor. Let me tell you what I look like: pale face, long hair, and a tiny start of a paunch. In addition, an awkward gait and a cigar in the mouth, and a pen in pocket or hand. It may affront the military-minded person to suggest a regime that does not maintain any military secrets. It is quite possible that we can do greater things than Jesus, for what is written in the Bible about him is poetically embellished. From the standpoint of daily life, however, there is one thing we do know, that we are here for the sake of each other. The ancients knew something which we seem to have forgotten. People will not disarm step by step. They will disarm at one blow or not at all. The most fundamental question we can ever ask ourselves is whether or not the universe we live in is friendly or hostile. The physicists say that I am a mathematician, and the mathematicians say that I am a physicist. I am a completely isolated man, and though everybody knows me, there are very few people who really know me. The state idea is not according to my heart. I cannot understand why it is needed. It is connected with narrow-minded and economic obstacles. I believe it is bad. I have always been against it. To one bent on age, death will come as a release. I feel this quite strongly now that I have grown old myself and have come to regard death like an old debt, at long last to be discharged. The next world war will be fought with stones. 1,000 things can prove me right and one can prove me wrong. There is no greater satisfaction for a just and well-meaning person than the knowledge that he has devoted his best energies to the service of the good cause. Those people have seen something. What it is I do not know, and I cannot care to know. What I value in life is quality rather than quantity. America is today the hope of all honorable men who respect the rights of their fellow men and who believe in the principle of freedom and justice. The history of scientific and technical discovery teaches us that the human race is poor in independent and creative imagination. On the other hand, the concept owes its meaning and its justification exclusively to the totality of the sense impressions which we associate with it. I am satisfied with the mystery of life's eternity and with a knowledge, a sense, of the marvelous structure of existence, as well as the humble attempt to understand even a tiny portion of the reason that manifests itself in nature. One cannot deal with a problem with the same thinking that creates it. We must learn to see the world anew. The truth of a theory is in your mind, not in your eyes. The world is a dangerous place to live. The equation for ego is 1 over knowledge. What physics looks for, the simplest possible system of thought which will bind together the observed facts. Newton did not know what happened to the apple, and I can prove this when the next eclipse comes. It is only to the individual that a soul is given, and the high destiny of the individual is to serve rather than to rule, or to impose himself in any other way. Love is not the stupidest thing a man does, but it cannot be blamed on gravity. No worthy problem is ever solved within the plane of its original conception. As far as I'm concerned, I prefer silent vice to ostentatious virtue. Isn't it strange that I, who have written only unpopular books, should be such a popular fellow? There is nothing divine about morality. It is a purely human affair. As the area of light expands, so does the perimeter of darkness. There is nothing known as perfect. It's only those imperfections which we choose not to see. The supreme goal of all theory is to make the irreducible basic elements as simple and as few as possible without having to surrender the adequate representation of a simple datum of experience. The problems that exist in this world cannot be solved by the level of thinking that created them. Relativity teaches us the connection between the different descriptions of one and the same reality. Enough for me is the mystery of the eternity of life and the inkling of the marvelous structure of reality. There is in this neither a will nor a goal, nor a must, but only sheer being. Between the difficulties, one hides the opportunity. One must shy away from questionable undertakings, even when they bear a high-sounding name. Fear or stupidity has always been the basis of most human actions. The emotional state that leads to achievements resembles that of a worshiper or the lover. The most practical solution is a good theory. Only world law can assure progress towards a civilized, peaceful community. The analogy I like is this: imagine being able to see the world, but you are deaf, and then suddenly someone gives you the ability to hear things as well. You get an extra dimension of perception. Is there not a certain satisfaction in the fact that natural limits are set to the life of the individual, so that at the conclusion it may appear as a work of art? We are boxed in by the boundary conditions of our thinking. The really good music, whether of the East or of the West, cannot be analyzed. It is characteristic of the military mentality that non-human factors are held essential, while the human being, his desires and thoughts, in short, the psychological factors, are considered as unimportant and secondary. One feels the insignificance of the individual, and it makes one happy. The payment of the worker is not determined by the value of his product. We cannot resolve the problems of the world by unseeing the same techniques that have created them. The enormous mental resilience, without which no chess player can exist, was so much taken up by chess that he could never free his mind of this game. Do you believe in immortality? No, and one life is enough for me. He who finds a thought that lets us a little deeper into the eternal mystery of nature has been granted great peace. My internal and external life depends so much on the work of others that I must make an extreme effort to give as much as I receive. A theory is the more impressive the greater the simplicity of its premises is, the more different kinds of things it relates, and the more extended its area of applicability. The concept of marriage must have been thought up by an unimaginative pig. The time comes in life when we have read enough. It's time to stop reading. It's time to lay down the books and write. Nature hides her secrets because of her essential loftiness, but not by means of ruse. But nature did not deem it her business to make the discovery of her laws easy for us. All my life I have dealt with objective matters, hence I lack both the natural aptitude and the experience to deal properly with people and to carry out official functions. I was very pleased with your kind letter. Until now I never dreamed of being something like a hero, but since you've given me the nomination I feel that I am one. Science can only ascertain what is, but not what should be, and outside of its domain value judgments of all kinds remain necessary. Striving for peace and preparing for war are incompatible with each other, and in our time more so than ever. The only justification for our concepts and systems of concepts is that they serve to represent the complex of our experiences. Beyond this, they have not legitimacy. Although I cannot believe that the individual survives the death of his body, feeble souls harbor such thought through fear or ridiculous egotism. A theory is the more impressive the greater is the simplicity of its premises, the more different are the kinds of things it relates, and the more extended the range of its applicability. Truly novel inventions emerge only in one's youth. Later one becomes ever more experienced, famous and foolish. I very rarely think in words at all. A thought comes, and I may try to express in words afterwards. The economists will have to revise their theories of value. I should very much like to remain in the darkness of not having been analyzed. I have never obtained any ethical values from my scientific work. I wouldn't want to live if I did not have my work. In any case, it's good that I'm already old and personally don't have to count on a prolonged future. I would absolutely refuse any direct or indirect war service and would try to persuade my friends to do the same, regardless of the reasons for the cause of a war. I myself should also be dead already, but I am still here. In the past, it never occurred to me that every casual remark of mine would be snatched up and recorded, otherwise I would have crept further into my shell. Berlin is the place to which I am most closely bound by human and scientific ties. In my relativity theory, I set up a clock at every point in space, but in reality, I find it difficult to provide even one clock in my room. Scientific greatness is less a matter of intelligence than character if the scientist refuses to compromise or accept incomplete answers and persists in grappling the most basic and difficult questions. Earnestly, I must exert myself in order to return as much as I have received. The most superior of scientific goals is to embrace a maximum of experiment with a minimum of hypotheses. Work is the only thing I do to escape the corruption of praise. If you want the answer to anything, go sit in nature for a while. The last thing to collapse is the surface. The magic of compounding interest is truly the eighth wonder of the world. Joy and amazement of the beauty and grandeur of this world of which man can just form a faint notion. I never thought that others would take my theories so much more seriously than I did. Conventional words or other signs have to be sought for laboriously only in a second stage, where the associative play already referred to is sufficiently established and can be reproduced at will. Were I wrong, one professor would have been enough. Concern for man himself must always constitute the chief objective of all technological effort. A mathematical equation stands forever. I'm no more intelligent than the next guy, I'm just more curious. The discovery of nuclear reactions need not bring about the destruction of mankind any more than the discovery of matches. I am of the opinion that all the finer speculations in the realm of science spring from a deep religious feeling, and that without such feeling they would not be fruitful. The devil craps on the big pile. Understanding physics is child's play when compared to understanding child's play. You cannot prepare for war and peace at the same time. There is one ray of hope. It seems to me that today the responsible leaders of the several peoples have, in the main, the honest will to abolish war. It is impossible to solve significant problems using the same knowledge that created them. Applying the axioms of physical science to human life has something reprehensible to it. Out yonder there was this huge world, which stands before us like a great eternal riddle. In my personal experience, I have hardly come to know the wretchedness of mankind better than as a result of the general theory of relativity and everything connected to it, but it doesn't bother me. A conviction akin to religious feeling of the rationality or intelligibility of the world lies behind all scientific work of a high order. Why is it that no one understands me and everybody likes me? When you know your limits, you go beyond them. Every day is an opportunity to make a new happy ending. What good is a reputation not put to good use? I have never looked upon ease and happiness as ends in themselves. This ethical basis I call the ideal of the pigsty. You think you have troubles with mathematics. I assure you mine are still bigger. The special theory of relativity owes its origins to Maxwell's equations of the electromagnetic field. I know that the most joy in my life has come to me from my violin. It is the same with people as it is with riding a bike. Only when moving can one comfortably maintain one's balance. Creating a new theory is not like destroying an old barn and erecting a skyscraper in its place. It is rather like climbing a mountain and gaining new and wider views. I like the Swiss because by and large they are more humane than the other people among whom I have lived. If everybody lived as I do, surely the writing of romance novels would never have come into being. Agreements about what is good or not are usually not worth much. It is very much like art. Is it not an art to lead a good life? One can only continue to expect to be read if one omits everything that is unimportant. lasting harmony with a woman, an undertaking in which I twice failed rather disgracefully. With me every peep becomes a trumpet solo. I rarely think in words at all. Discussion and argument are essential parts of science. The greatest talent is the ability to strip a theory until the simple basic idea emerges with clarity. Whatever your problems in math are, I assure mine are greater. What led me more or less directly to the special theory of relativity was the conviction that the electromotive force acting on a body in motion in a magnetic field was nothing else but an electric field. Give back to the world at least what you've received. It takes a different kind of thinking to solve a problem than the kind of thinking which produced the problem. It has often been said, and certainly not without justification, that the man of science is a poor philosopher. On the left-hand side of the field equation we may add the fundamental tensor gov, multiplied by a universal constant, L, at present unknown, without destroying the general covariance. Since I have introduced this term, I had always a bad conscience. I cannot help to feel it strongly, and I am unable to believe that such an ugly thing should be realized in nature. For an idea which, at first, does not seem absurd, there is no hope. The bitter and the sweet come from the outside, the hard from within, from one's own efforts. The only rational way of educating is to be an example, if one can't help it, a warning example. One is born into a herd of buffaloes and must be glad if one is not trampled underfoot before one's time. I have remained a simple fellow who asks nothing of the world. Only my youth is gone, the enchanting youth that forever walks on air. Which quote did you like the most? Share your opinion in the comments. Don't miss out on a chance to see the next video. Subscribe.